Hello and welcome to Kakaaki, the African Voice on African Independent Television, AIT. I am Adora Sydney Jack. And of course, the polities, of course, getting geared for all the politics of 2027. Yesterday, we ran with the headlines of the ADC convention. Well, to be or not to be, today's events will tell us whether that would happen in earnest or the dynamics will play out, like some say. Well, Nigeria's Center, however, for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, CPPE, over the weekend picked holes in the World Bank recommendation for increased importation of petroleum products and food, warning that it could undermine Nigeria's economic development. Now, CPPE founder Dr. Muda Yusuf said in a statement on Sunday that the advice was inconsistent with Nigeria's reform agenda. He maintained that industrialization remained the most viable pathway to Nigeria's economic transformation. In a statement released on Monday as well, CPPE's Chief Executive Officer Muda Yusuf said the proposal outlined in the bank's recent Nigerian development update was concerning and could derail progress made towards macroeconomic stability. Now, the report, which has since been withdrawn, had suggested issuing more fuel import licenses to address rising prices and perhaps curb inflation. However, the recommendation has sparked widespread criticism among stakeholders. Meanwhile, the Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association of Nigeria, Petroan, appears to have a different view from the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. Now, while reiterating a strong commitment to promoting healthy competition in Nigeria's downstream petroleum sector as a catalyst for growth, that is, efficiency and price stability, Petroan in a statement also said it notes with keen interest the recent position of the World Bank, as reported, urging the federal government to reinstate petrol import licenses to avert a potential inflation spike. Now, the national president of Petroan, Dr. Billy Julius Harry, while getting reactions from journalists in Abuja regarding the statement made by World Bank, emphasized that this position further validates Petroan's long-standing advocacy for a liberalized and competitive downstream market. Among his recommendations include the immediate reinstatement of petrol import licenses to encourage multiple supply sources, deepen competition, and stabilize pump prices and full privatization or commercial restructuring of government-owned refineries to ensure efficiency, transparency, and optimal performance. So, with all of that, this Tuesday, we'll be looking at both sides of the coin, that is, as we will be joined by both gentlemen, the CEO of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, Muda Yusuf, and the national president of the National Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association, Dr. Billy Julius Harris, who will join us on the show. And of course, we'll definitely get both sides of the story, find out what's happening in between the lines and where we stand right now on that matter. Now, away from that, despite constituting the majority of the country's population, Nigerian youths, who should ordinarily serve as the engine room of reform and innovation, appear largely unable to translate their numerical strength, digital influence, and episodic activism into sustained political and structural change. Moments like the NSAS protests revealed the latent power of youth-led movements, yet that momentum has not resulted in enduring institutional reforms or a significant shift in leadership accountability or sustained structural change. With the recent rise in political activity in the face, of course, of the countdown of the 2027 general election, expectations are that the youths should be making their voices heard. But it appears that it's not quite happening. And this has raised fundamental concern, whether the limitation lies in systemic barriers deliberately designed to exclude young people, that is, in internal challenges such as fragmentation, short-term engagement, economic vulnerability, and the absence of a coordinated strategy. Is it a failure of leadership or a failure of followership? Are systemic barriers too entrenched? Or has apathy, division, and economic survival weakened collective action? What must change for the youth to move from potential to power? Now, these are some of the questions, many of the questions we will be asking a young activist and public affairs analyst, Jude Ferrami. And of course, he'll bring light to all of this, in between the lines, and highlight where the challenges really begin and if there are resolutions to all of this. Remember that you can be part of the program, of course, by sending your views and comments to our social media handles on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube, of course, on Africa Independent TV, so you can stay up to date with the latest news from around the world. And we saw you bring it all in yesterday, so let's do that again today, shall we? But in the meantime, of course, Chicks is standing by for the world news headline. Good morning, Chicks.
Good morning, Adora, and thank you so much. You're welcome to the World News on Kakaaki. A senior Hezbollah political official told the Associated Press on Monday, a day before Israeli and Lebanese officials are set to hold the opening meeting in the two countries' first direct talks in decades, that the militant group will not abide by any agreement made in those negotiations. Wafik Safa, a high-ranking member of the group's political council, said the group opposes direct negotiations between Lebanon and Israel. While Lebanese officials hope to achieve a ceasefire through the talks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the goal is disarmament of Hezbollah and a potential peace agreement between Lebanon and Israel, which do not have diplomatic relations. Iran has separately sought to include Lebanon in any ceasefire agreement of its own with the United States, although Israel and the US have insisted that Lebanon is not part of the deal. Hours after Tehran and Washington announced a truce last Wednesday, Israel launched more than 100 strikes across Lebanon, including in densely packed residential and commercial areas of central Beirut. There have been no strikes on Beirut or its southern suburbs since Wednesday, although intense fighting has continued in the south of the country, including in the town of Kiam, the fall of which would cut off the south from Lebanon's eastern Bikay Valley, another area with a large Hezbollah presence. The US and Israel have not officially announced a halt to strikes in the capital. Two separate Israeli gunfire attacks killed two Palestinians in southern Gaza on Monday, according to health officials at Nasser Hospital, where the bodies were taken. The Israeli military did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The cousin of one of the men who was killed, Mahmoud al-Fakawi, pointed at the lifeless body of his brother, covered in a white burial shroud, in the hallway of Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. Questioning the ceasefire agreement, family and friends performed funeral prayers outside the hospital ahead of the burial. The Gaza Strip has seen near daily Israeli fire and strikes since a fragile ceasefire was reached in October, and more than 750 Palestinians have been killed since then, according to figures from the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry. Israel and Hamas have traded accusations of violating the ceasefire. Finnish President Alexander Stubb has told a Washington, D.C. audience Monday that he thinks Ukraine is now on top form, a military perspective, in its war against Russia. Speaking at the Brookings Institution, Stubb described horrific casualties that Russia is now suffering at the hands of Ukraine's innovative drone warfare operation, adding that since December, they have killed around 35,000 Russian soldiers per month, as Russia is not able to recruit enough soldiers to compensate those 35. Stubb said the ratio of the Russian troop losses to Ukrainian troop losses is tremendous, disclosing that the killing ratio right now is 1 to 5, meaning 1 Ukrainian soldier to 5 Russian soldiers. And in 2025, Russia gained less than 1 percentage point of territory with 400,000 casualties. At the same time, Stubb said since the war began, he has not seen the EU as united as it is currently, while all means are being used to change the strategic calculation of Putin, and optimistic that such victory will be maintained. Thousands of Peruvians were back at the polls on Monday for a second day of voting after failure to deliver ballots to voting centers extended Sunday's election by a day. Electoral authorities granted the one-day extension to more than 52,000 voters in Peru's capital, Lima. Peruvians registered to vote in the U.S. cities of Orlando, Florida, and Patterson, New Jersey, were also allowed to vote Monday for similar reasons. Voting is mandatory for Peruvians from the ages of 18 to 70. Failure to do so comes with a fine of up to $32. A former minister, a comedian, and a political dynasty heiress are among 35 candidates vying to become Peru's 9th president in just 10 years. The election comes as a surge in violent crime and corruption has fueled widespread discontent among voters who largely view candidates as dishonest and unprepared for the presidency. Many of the contenders have responded to the crime concerns with wide-ranging proposals, including building mega prisons, restricting food for prisoners, and reinstating the death penalty for serious crimes. A presidential candidate needs more than 50% of votes to win outright. However, a runoff in June is virtually assured, given the deeply divided electorate and the pool of candidates, the largest in the Andean country's history. Voters are also being asked to choose the members of a bicameral Congress for the first time in more than 30 years, following recent legislative reforms that concentrate significant power in the new upper chamber. Hungarian voters have ousted long-serving Prime Minister Viktor Orban after 16 years in power. The big election over the weekend was in a small European country nearly half a world away from Washington. But the defeat of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has significant reverberations in the United States. President Donald Trump and many U.S. conservatives have long embraced Orban, who has become an icon among the global right for his anti-immigrant stance. An analyst at the American Enterprise Institute, Dalibor Rohak, said Donald Trump looks more and more kind of isolated than any sort of singular figure on the global stage, rather than somebody who is leading a movement that spans across countries and continents. Adding that, Rohak says Orban's loss also is a blow to Vice President J.D. Vance. His defeat after 16 years in power led to celebrations on Sunday from both Democrats and Republicans, some of whom criticized the Trump administration for such overt support for the Hungarian leader. And now Pope Leo XIV has pushed back on U.S. President Donald Trump's broadside against him over the U.S.-Israel war in Iran, saying that the Vatican's appeals for peace and reconciliation were rooted in the gospel. Pope Leo was responding to reporters' question on board the papal plane en route to Algiers on Monday. The first U.S.-born pope stressed that he was not making a direct attack on Trump or anyone else, with his general appeal for peace and criticisms of the delusion of omnipotence that is fueling the Iran war and other conflicts around the world. Trump delivered an extraordinary broadside against the Pope on Sunday night, saying he didn't think the U.S.-born global leader of the Catholic Church is doing a very good job, and that he's a very liberal person, while also suggesting the pontiff should stop catering to the radical left. Flying back to Washington from Florida, Trump used a lengthy social media post to sharply criticize Leo, then kept it up after landing in comments on the tarmac to reporters. While it's not unusual for popes and presidents to be at cross purposes, it's rare for the Pope to directly criticize a U.S. leader, while Trump's stinging response is equally uncommon. The African Democratic Congress caucus in the House of Representatives has called for the removal and prosecution of the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Joash Amopiton, over what they described as alleged partiality and inconsistencies in the discharge of his duties ahead of the 2027 general elections. The lawmakers, while briefing the media at the National Assembly on Monday, cited allegations of partisan conduct linked to the INEC chairman in a controversial social media account, accusing Amopiton of undermining the ADC's participation in forthcoming elections, particularly through what they described as interference in the party's internal leadership structure.
Partiality and integrity. The House Caucus of the ADC on Monday, 13th April 2026, hereby calls for the removal of Professor Amopiton from office and advocates for his prosecution in order to safeguard the nation against an unavoidable descent into anti-democratic practices. The caucus is gravely concerned about the ostensibly undemocratic actions taken by INEC under the leadership of Professor Miputah. We note that the Commission, in collusion with certain elements within the judiciary, is actively working to undermine the aspirations of the ADC, thereby seeking to prevent the party from fielding candidates in the forthcoming elections.
On that basis, we have united also as a one family to now elect our caucus leader in the House of Reps under ADC. He is in the person of Right Honorable Afam Ogene.
On the National Judicial Council to investigate politically exposed, arguing that courts lack jurisdiction over internal party affairs as provided in the 2026 Electoral Act, insisting that any contrary judicial intervention would amount to a violation of the law. In what appears to be a last-minute solution to secure a venue for its Tuesday's National Convention, the African Democratic Congress, ADC, has finally booked an event center in Kakaaki District, Abuja, Rainbow, where its last National Executive Committee NEC meeting was held. The ADC claimed to have been allegedly denied two venues, Transcorp Hilton and the Eagle Square, without cogent reasons, despite early arrangements by the National Planning Committee, adding that the letter was acknowledged, but there was no response.
The African Democratic Congress National Convention is scheduled to hold on Tuesday, April 14th, 2026. But 24 hours to go, the David Mark-led ADC group is still shopping for a venue. They allege that all requests for venues within the Federal Capital Territory have been turned down. But the claims have been denied. Members of the ADC's Media Committee and the National Convention claimed they had submitted a formal request to the FCT Minister's office for the use of Eagle Square. They insisted that the letter was acknowledged but received no response. The committee further explained that efforts to secure the velodrome at the Moshood Abiola National Stadium also failed, alleging that ADC officials were denied access by the relevant authorities. Despite these setbacks, the party leadership maintained that the National Convention will proceed as planned on Tuesday. In what appears to be a last-minute solution to secure a venue for its Tuesday's National Convention, the opposition party has finally booked an event center in Kakaaki District, Abuja, Rainbow, where its last National Executive Committee NEC meeting was held. Funke Ogunolu, LIT News.
The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has dismissed claims that any political party was denied access to Eagle Square, stating that no formal request was made for its use. Speaking on Monday, Wike said nobody has written to the administration. He added that if the claims were linked to the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, they were likely an attempt to attract public sympathy. Wike emphasized that access to Eagle Square follows a clearly defined process, which includes submitting a formal application through the Abuja Investments Company Limited, the agency responsible for managing the facility, as well as payment of the necessary fees.
The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, on Monday, used his inspection tour to address several issues of public interest in Nigeria. Top on the list was the allegation that the African Democratic Congress, ADC, was denied access to the Eagle Square or any other government facility for its planned national convention.
As I speak to you, nobody has written any letter. I don't know the very they are talking about. They have, okay, let's make an assume that they talk about Eagle Square. Nobody, not one, wrote any letter to use Eagle Square. I called the GMD of AFSIP. That's nothing like that. There's no way we would deny them because we collect revenue from that. You have to pay. And nobody has written to us. They're only looking for how they can attract public sympathy, which is not going to be. The truth is that let them come out and show the application they wrote and it was received by either the Abuja Investment Company or in my of his documents. Bus terminal.
Another issue of concern is the Kubo bus terminal, whose roof was blown off by strong winds last week. The minister says reconstruction efforts are already underway.
That was, would you not use ordinary wood? They use steel. To tell you how strong that wind was, it just took off all the roof sheet. So it did not affect the structure. There was no collapse of any, just the roof sheet wasn't collapsed, just that the roof, and they started putting it back.
The inspection tour also covered key infrastructure projects, including the construction of the main carriageways of the Outer Southern Expressway, an access road in Gadua, and the development of the informal sector in Wassa, where work is progressing rapidly. Chukwebuka Obodo, AIT News, Abuja.
And that's it for the world news on Kakaaki. Up next is Kakaaki Business. Do stay with us.
Welcome to Kakaaki Business. I am Landry Babalola. The World Bank President Ajay Banga has sounded an alarm about looming employment crisis in developing countries in the next 10 to 15 years. Banga remarked that according to current trajectories, the economies of those countries will generate only about 400 million jobs, leaving a deficit of 800 million jobs. The World Bank governing body, the Development Committee, has outlined plans to work with developing countries to streamline policy and regulatory conditions that have hampered investment and job creation for years, such as transparency, anti-corruption, labor law, logistics, and better trade system. West Texas Intermediate crude futures climbed as much as 9.3% to above $105 per barrel on Monday, recouping losses from last week after President Donald Trump announced a U.S. blockade of the Strait of Hormuz following the collapse of weekend negotiations with Iran. The restriction will apply only to vessels entering or leaving Iranian ports starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The annual inflation rate in India rose to 3.4% in March of 2026 from 3.21% in the previous month to mark the largest inflation rate in over 1 year, despite coming below median market expectation of 3.8%. It was only the third reading in India's new CPI, which updated the weight of different goods within the index, according to the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey from 2 fiscal years ago. In the meantime, inflation inched higher from restaurant and accommodation, and prices were unchanged for transportation, despite surges in wholesale global energy prices. From the previous month, India consumer price rose by 0.26%. And global economic leaders are gathering in Washington, D.C. for the 2026 spring meeting of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank Group amid rising global tensions. With oil prices surging and supply chains disrupted by the Iran conflict and Strait of Hormuz crisis, the IMF warns of global growth slowdown.
From Washington, D.C., the 2026 spring meetings of the IMF and the World Bank Group opened against the most fragile global backdrops in recent history. At the center of this crisis, there's the Iran war and the disruption happening at the Strait of Hormuz. We're seeing global oil prices surging over $100 per barrel, triggering fresh inflation fears and supply chain shocks worldwide. IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva set the tone ahead of the meetings, warning that there will be no need to return to the status quo. She confirmed that global growth forecasts will be revised downwards despite earlier projections of 3.3% in 2026. A temporary ceasefire announced by Trump on April 8 has failed to hold, with diplomatic talks collapsing and new threats of a naval blockade by United States Central Command escalating risk in the region. Now, finance ministers and central bank governors from around the world are gathering here this week to navigate what is fast becoming a supply-driven global economic crisis. The focus: stabilizing markets, managing energy shocks, and preventing a prolonged inflationary spiral. As the meetings unfold through this week, one thing is clear: the decisions taken here will determine how the global economy weathers this new era of uncertainty.
And in Nigeria, the federal government has scrapped import duties on electric vehicles, mass transit buses, and manufacturing machinery as part of fresh fiscal measures to curb inflation and reduce economic pressure on citizens. The directive follows an intervention by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who tasked economic managers with cushioning the impact of the ongoing Middle East crisis, particularly rising fuel costs. According to a statement shared by Presidential Aide Dada Olusegun, import duties of EVs and mass transit buses have been cut from 5 to 0%, while levies on manufacturing machineries have also been eliminated to lower production costs and support industrial growth. The policy extends beyond these categories. Tariff on passengers' vehicles were reduced from 70% to 40%, while duties on bulk rice dropped to 47.5% and broken rice to 30%. Adjustments were also made to raw sugarcane, crude palm oil, steel products, and ceramic tiles to ease food and construction costs. A 90-day transition window effective April 1 has been introduced to allow gradual market adjustment and minimize disruption. Nigeria will seek stronger international financial support at this week's IMF World Bank Spring meeting as the round war lifts fuel costs at home and complicates reforms. The Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, said this on Monday. Wale Edun said while higher crude prices have boosted foreign exchange earnings for African top oil producers, they are simultaneously driving inflation and increasing the cost of living. Petrol prices have surged by over 50% to about 1,330 naira per litre, while diesels have jumped more than 70% to 1,550 naira per litre since the conflict began, adding strains on households and businesses. At the meeting in Washington, Edun, who also shares the G24 group, will advocate for lower borrowing costs, fairer global financial condition, and increased support for reform-driven economies. The Nigeria Customs Service is seeking stronger collaboration with key stakeholders, including banks, auditors, and the National Assembly, as it expands the use of artificial intelligence to improve revenue collection, remittance, and reconciliation. The Controller General of Customs, Adewale Adeniyi, made this known on Monday in Abuja at the opening of a stakeholders training on AI-driven revenue management.
According to the Nigeria Customs Service, the 5-day training program on AI-powered revenue generation, remittances, and reconciliation is designed to leverage technology to close performance gaps. Comptroller General of Customs Adewale Adeniyi said revenue administration is a complex system involving several stakeholders, including banks, auditors, policy committees, and the legislature.
We are all united in a very strong resolve to ensure transparency in public accounting. We are united by a common objective of achieving fiscal discipline and, of course, bringing some holding us to account.
It is imperative that we embrace an innovative technology to enhance our operational effectiveness. Artificial intelligence is no longer a concept of the future. It is a present-day tool that offers unprecedented opportunities to optimize revenue processes, minimize leakages, improve remittance accuracy, and ensure seamless reconciliation.
Chairman of the House Committee on Public Accounts says continuous oversight remains essential as government institutions adopt new technologies.
We also believe that you have the power of using that organization to promote the national image of Nigeria, to also enhance global diplomacy. And the only way you can successfully do that is if you improve on your processes, on your system, on your structure in a manner that will make them globally compliant.
The move toward an AI-powered revenue model reflects a shared commitment to discipline in public financial management. The customs boss added that technology has become central to the service's operations, especially in risk management, trade monitoring, fraud detection, and the analysis of trade patterns.
Nigeria's crackdown on terrorism financing has taken a decisive turn as the Nigeria Sanctions Committee designates 10 individuals and 3 companies for asset freezes and financial restriction over alleged links to extremist funding network. The directive, communicated through the Security and Exchange Commission, mandates immediate compliance by capital market operators as authorities intensify efforts to disrupt financial channels to insurgent groups, including Boko Haram. Issued under the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act 2022, identifies individuals, entities allegedly involved in financing terrorism, with several previously convicted by the Abu Dhabi Federal Court of Appeal for moving funds from United Arab Emirates to Nigeria. The Security and Exchange Commission has instructed all capital market operators to enforce the sanction by identifying and freezing without prior notice all funds and assets linked to designated persons and entities. The order extends beyond directly owned accounts to include jointly held assets, indirectly controlled resources, and any fund derived from or associated with the listed individuals or firms. Financial institutions are also required to report all actions taken to the Nigerian Sanctions Committee while filing suspicious transactions report with the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit for further analysis. Regulator says the asset freezing mechanism is a preventive strategy aimed at cutting off financial lifelines that sustain terrorism, warning that failure to comply could result in both criminal and civil consequences as well as reputational risk. The move reinforces Nigeria's commitment to global standard on anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing, while strengthening oversight across the financial system. And that's it on Kakaaki Business. Good morning.
But thank you, Larry, for that. And interesting business of the day there. And we did see Nancy there looking at the world spring and, you know, what will happen, especially with the fall and drop in oil price, rise in oil prices. But away from business and now to the business of women. Now, as we count down to the 2027 elections, there are heightened concerns about women's participation in politics, especially as INEC has released its timetable. The question is, will half the population, the currency of participation and mobilization, which are women, be considered in this coming election? You know, the conversation around reserve seats and special seats continue to raise advocacy measures. However, towards the 2027 and the countdown, one question remains: where are the women? Here's the report.
With the clock ticking towards the 2027 general elections, gender advocates are growing increasingly worried about the fate of the proposed special seat for women bill. Political parties are already preparing for their primaries in the coming month, and for women, it could potentially stall years of intense advocacy aimed at tipping the scales of representation. Across various communities, aspiring female leaders routinely face cultural barriers, financial constraints, and systemic exclusion that keep them out of the political space and sidelined in party structures. Currently, women occupy only about 4.4% of the parliamentary seats, ranking Nigeria near the absolute bottom of global listings. This figure sits far below the sub-Saharan African average of 23.4% and the West African regional average of 15%.
You have to be deliberate and know that you are focused, you want to get that result. Else, it's still going to be very difficult. And the National Working Committee is very critical in decision-making for the parties. And this is the time, because the primaries are already around the corner. If there's any time we need to get women there, it's now.
While some stakeholders express deep concern over the timeline, others argue that with strong political will, the process can easily be expedited. They point to the swift passage of the 2026 Electoral Amendment Act as clear evidence that urgent reforms are achievable when prioritized.
So I believe and I hope and I pray that the Women's Inclusions Bill will equally get that level of attention. For people like us, we will continue to push. But remember, the minority can only have their say while the majority will have their way.
Every time there is an election, we'll gather women, come and clap, bang, 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 come and dance. And at the end of the day, women are not called on the table. I think it's very unfair to us as women.
And we should not just talk about inclusiveness, but take positive steps to ensure that it works.
The chairman of the House Committee on Women Affairs also weighed in, speaking on the critical roles that wives of governors and senators can play in achieving balanced representation. As Nigeria continues to grapple with women low representation in governance, women rights groups, advocates and stakeholders are calling for more opportunities for women to contest, win, and be part of policies that shape women and Nigeria at large. Aicheda Majekodomi, AIT News, Abuja.
Welcome back from that report there from our colleague. And we have another report on the way, and this is taking a look at the security outlook and what the Nigerian Police Force is currently doing as they release figures on their work against organized crime in the country. Let's take a look.
Across Kwara, Kogi, Taraba, Benue State, and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The suspects are also said to be linked to terrorism, kidnapping, cattle rustling, homicide, and the killing of 3 police officers, with several weapons recovered.
Exhibits recovered from the suspects include 1 locally fabricated rifle, 1 locally fabricated revolver pistol, 2 rounds of live cartridge, and 1 complete Nigeria Police Mobile Force uniform. Exhibits recovered from them include 7 AK-47 rifles, 7 magazines of AK-47 rifles, 1 anti-aircraft launcher, and 32 rounds of 7.6mm live ammunition, 5 walkie-talkie communication devices.
Authorities say the suspect will be charged to court upon conclusion of investigations. Ada Ononye, AIT News, Abuja.
All right, welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed that report there from our colleague on the Nigerian Police Force. And earlier on the women, as Adora talks about going into 2027 elections, what's the outlook for Nigerian women? Those who are interested, in contesting for offices, positions, are they going to be giving the leeway to do that? Are they going to run unopposed? Are they going to be allowed, or are they going to be shut down, by their opponents and all of that? Different one. And I think yesterday on social media, there was a video of the Ogun State, governor having a consensus candidate, according to him, for the Ogun State governorship election. And a lot of questions from some Nigerians on social media was, what happens to President Olusegun Obasanjo's daughter, that's Iyabo Obasanjo? What happens to her aspirations and all of that? So that's one example, of what women and Nigerians are talking about going into the 2027 elections.
Absolutely. And, just going by that report that I saw and the details in between by Blossom, it's quite clear. One of the messaging there is that political parties must take ownership for this process. The Inter-Parliamentary Union says that women occupy political positions at 26% globally. And down to see Nigeria ranking the list. From last year to this year, time for passage has moved. Point with what Honorable Kafili had mentioned earlier, the timelines on, party primaries are close enough. And without the passage of that bill, the danger lies in the fact that women will not emerge under the reserve seats. And so primarily, there could be the danger of less women emerging at the primaries because it's going to be a tougher election. It's going to be a more expensive election. And when that happens, it means that if women don't emerge at primaries, then of course there are no women enough to run as candidates in the real election. So whether we are thinking Rwanda, Sierra Leone, all of the comparative country analysis that we make, we must look inwards and tell ourselves the truth. Nigeria cannot give itself what it cannot provide for. Political parties must look inward. I do not know if IPAC is playing a role. I know they were central in the conversation. But the party chairman must be deliberate to look at, even if we look at delaying, which is what I see happening, the passage of the quota, political parties and the women who are ready to run must come forward. And as we see things play out, none of the political parties have been able to show us any female presidential candidate, any, gubernatorial candidate that we know has a strong inroads. I mean, ADC is not giving us an option, APC is not giving us an option, Labour with a woman chairman, you know, I'm hopeful that more women will emerge, but we just need to look at the dynamism of quota, and the reserve seats for women's bill might be the only inroad we have ahead of 2027. Unless we don't do that, it's 2031.
Yes, hopefully 2027 will be looking brighter for Nigerian women when it comes to politics as well. Now, to the Nigerian police, we know with that reports there from our colleague Ada, they're doing a lot of work when it comes to organized crime, comes to insurgency in the country, but there absolutely still is a lot that needs to be done.
Absolutely.
There are people who are not safe out there. You know, people are scared these days, walking out at night, going out at night. You know, I always tell my friends, and if you're going somewhere later on, just send a text message. Oh, this is where I'm going to. This is where I'm going to be. Just in case you never can tell if you're going to need the help of the police or anything. Though. But it's just alarming with those images on television how there are people in this country, you know, having guns, bullets, weapons in that amount. And, well, I don't know, the police might be, I don't know if they're able to secure the entire country because we've seen a whole lot of issues when it comes to insecurity, though. But kudos to them for what we're seeing on the screen there.
And I think this strengthens the call for state policing as well because, again, you know, connectivity and intelligence only begins when it's domesticated. Yeah. And if we do have the availability of hands and boots on the ground at the state level, this work also gets to be expanded. And we do see that their network of criminal syndicates would also shrink. However, you know, to whom much is given, much is expected, Chooks. I do think that the federal government, the Nigerian police, needs a lot of work in terms of welfare, needs a lot of work in terms of shoving up the numbers to be able to have more boots on ground. And I think the call for state police perhaps may just help that. But in the meantime, I think welfare for me, I mean, if you're expecting men to put their lives on the line and, you know, to be out there doing their duty, you know, judiciously and pragmatically, you must be able to provide an inroad where they feel, you know, well catered enough to serve the country diligently without bias or partisanship.
Yes, absolutely important because they're leaving behind families for those who pay the supreme price. What becomes of their families? That's another big question. How do you take care of their families as well? And I'm sure the IGP, the president, all will be listening to everything we've said today and do well going forward for the Nigerian police force.
All right, so we'll take our social intervention segment and then we'll be back for newspaper review. Stay with us.
The stories now break online. Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, Official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
Gender Agenda is where policy meets people. It's a bold policy literacy platform bridging the gap between decision makers and women across every sector. From parliament to politics, from leadership to governance, from peace to economy, development, human rights. From Nigeria to the rest of Africa, Gender Agenda amplifies voices too often excluded, ensuring every voice counts. Through compelling storytelling, social impact dialogue, thought-provoking documentaries, town halls that lean on data and research, we raise the bar. Gender Agenda, every Friday, 4:30 p.m. live on AIT and on AIT's YouTube channel at AIT Live.
My name is Adora Sydney Jack, and this is Gender Agenda.
Gender Agenda. Women rising.
To Get Fit in 60 Seconds with Dolly Phillips. Now, everyone has 60 seconds in every day to spare. So if you're ready, let's go! Hello again. Dolly Phillips here for your 1-minute workout. And what are we doing? We're working those legs and those abs with your forward kick and your side kick. Are you ready? Your time starts now. Come on, left leg, forward, side. Again, right, forward, and side. Every time you kick, you're working those abs, all right? I'm not looking for height, but I'm looking for precision. So make sure you kick and kick. If you're kicking low, that's fine. Just make sure you do it with intention, all right? Out. Keep going. Who's the ninja today? You are. Come on. Let's go. Forward and side. Forward and side. You can feel those abs working. Anytime you feel like, go higher. Come on. Forward and side. Yeah, there you go. Work it out. Forward, side, forward, side. Keep your guard up in front of you. Yes, your body must be streamlined. Control. 5 seconds left. Come on. 3, 2, 1. And time. Woohoo! Well done. I hope you had a great workout. Anyway, what I need you to do is to follow us on Instagram at Alpha Fitness Studios and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Alpha Fitness Studios, for free workout videos, free dance videos, sales and promos, and make sure you join us at the gym, Alpha Fitness Studios in Lekki Phase 1 next time you're in Lagos. So until the next time, bye-bye.
Hello, great people of Nigeria. Welcome to the Leadership Clinic. Today, I'll be speaking on the act of being a good neighbor. I mean, this is a philosophical statement that I've just made out there. Let me tell you where leadership truly begins. Right next door. Leadership starts with how you treat the people that are around you, your immediate environment, people who live around you, people you work with, people in the same community with you, people that you meet in the bus station, people that you meet at the airport, the people that interact with you at every point in time. The reality of the matter is that you cannot lead outside the range of relationships. I mean, having people that are all over you and all of that, but most of the time, it is those people who are closer to you can actually determine how far that you can go in terms of leadership. What are the reviews about you? And the first thing that is important is that you build solid relationships. Building relationships, you must be intentional about it. You show genuine interest in the people around you. When you show genuine interest in the people around you, what it means is that you are willing to serve them. You are willing to add value to them. You are willing to actually be friendly with them. You are willing to be able to do specific things that are value adding to them. It makes a lot of difference if you can understand that in a very outstanding way. The second thing is that you must look out for each other, especially when you are working in teams. When you find people who are working in teams and they are watching each other's back, if you see something suspicious, you alert the person. That is your neighbor. If someone is traveling, offer to keep an eye on their house. You know, I'm talking about in some neighborhoods. I mean, a lot of us are actually very guilty with that. We don't even know who is our next neighbor. We don't even, during holiday period, we don't even know how to even reach out to them. So at the end of the day, you can be in an environment or you'll be in a closed space working with people, but what? There's simply no relationship. The third element is that solving problems together. Don't just complain, provide solutions. Whenever there is a crisis around a community, around an office, around an environment, even in cabinet meetings, the ability to be able to look at specific problems and solving those problems creates an opportunity for you to show leadership that is sustainable. The fourth element is that you celebrate together. Whenever you accomplish any particular goal, you accomplish an objective, everybody is happy. Coming together to celebrate is critical. So when one person wins, what do? The other persons join hands in what? In celebrating the other person. So when an environment operates just like that, what it means is that every individual that is showing leadership will be recognized, will be appreciated, and at the end of the day will be respected. Because respect is actually about what you give what comes out of you, the vibes, according to the new generation of leaders, the vibes that you give. It's very important in, maintaining your leadership class and leadership level. And so I want to let you know today, if you're listening to me today, one of the major things that you must learn how to do is that you must learn how to be present in the lives of those who are around you the best way possible to serve them. Great people of Nigeria, you must remember, if a man does not have a purpose for waking up, sleeping becomes interesting.
Have you ever wondered why you need to thoroughly weigh the consequences of taking your child to a primary boarding school? Are you surprised? So many parents now demand for it. I know the responsibility that comes with parenting and a busy schedule. It is gradually becoming a trend for parents and single parents to consider taking their child to a primary boarding school just to relieve them of some stress of having to cope with school runs and a demanding job at the same time. However, a child between age 2 and 9 is in his or her formative years, a period when the child learns and forms certain habits. Leaving your child in a primary boarding school may cause the child to be very independent and prevent parent-child bonding. Parents then discover that their own child is a stranger with habits learned from peers and school caregivers, which may or may not conform to your principles. But what if you are a single parent or a family member caring and nurturing the child through school just because he or she has become an orphan, yet you need to keep your hectic job? Well, make sure that you hunt for a good school with moderate discipline, clean and safe boarding facilities. And I would prefer a Monday to Friday primary boarding school so that you can share your weekend with the child, so that you would also instill your own principles and be part of the child's formative years. Every child deserves that parental love, attention, and daily bonding. Family comes first, but I also understand that you need to make ends meet. Weigh the options and measure the consequences. Honestly, that's my 2 kobo.
The stories now break online. Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, Official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
Gender Agenda is where policy meets people. It's a bold policy literacy platform bridging the gap between decision makers and women across every sector, from parliament to politics, from leadership to governance.
Back to Kakaaki, the African Voice on AIT, and it's 7 o'clock. It's time for us to take a look at what the dailies are saying. And as usual on Tuesday, we have 2 gentlemen right here in the studio, Dr. Austin Maho and Alhaji Mohijid Dahiru. Good morning, gentlemen.
Yeah, good morning.
You guys are smiling, having bright faces.
Absolutely. I had an aghast face look when you came back on air. Like, they look too good to be true this morning. And almost complimented just the way we are.
Yeah.
Great to see you guys. All right, let's begin this morning with the Authority newspaper, and that's what we opened this morning. Another commander, 6 soldiers killed by terrorist IED. Tinubu summoned service chiefs, and that's the lead story coming to you from the Authority newspaper this morning. Bottom page, ADC moves National Convention to another venue as Wike denies refusing them Eagle Square, and that's on page 2.
All right, now moving on to the next page, which is This Nigeria. And it reads, how IED killed CO, 6 others in Monguno. That's coming from the army. Military hails falling officers' courage, selfless service, plans to intensify training for operational effectiveness, battlefield readiness.
And then we move to the New Telegraph. Insecurity, terrorists kill Colonel, 6 soldiers during raid, a military base in Borno. Mopol, 13 others killed in Benue State attack. Tinubu meets service chiefs as reps hold security summit in Plateau. And that's on page 2, 3, and 6. Bottom page again, Wike responds, I didn't deny ADC use of Eagle Square, says Wike, as ADC reps demand Amoputin's sack and persecution, says democracy in danger.
And now to the Standard Times. Colonel, 6 soldiers killed in Borno terror attack. That's the major headline there from the Standard Times. Daily Sun moves to outrage of a murder of Colonel, 6 soldiers in fresh terrorist raid. Mopol, 9 others killed in renewed attacks in Benue. You also want to see that story. Well, I will soon decide on Abia Goba contest, says Reps Deputy Speaker Carlo. But beside, just opposite the masthead, IMF warns Nigeria, others against policy missteps. And now to the daybreak, we have Tinubu holds emergency security meeting amid deteriorating security situation. Page 2 of the daybreak. And Al Jazeera Nigeria this morning still looks at insecurity. Again, Tinubu meets security chiefs and says as terrorists kill Army Colonel, 4 others abroad. You also want to see that story there. Be security conscious, adhere to safety. NYSC urges core members, and that's on page 6. Now to the Nigerian pilots, we have more killings in Benue. Governor Alea keeps silent as suspected herdsmen killed 12 in Benue communities. Attacks took place separately on Friday and Sunday, but state government is yet to react. Nigerian pilot there. And the Daily Monitor still looks at insecurity. This time says insecurity can end in 6 months if federal government is serious, and that's Ndume. You also want to see the rider saying laments continued loss of military personnel, including senior officers, and that's coming to you. But just above the masthead, 2027, not is Nigeria's greatest asset. I will prioritize its development. Coming from Peter Obi, says nobody can build what I intend to build and enough. That's from Peter Obi. Observers Times, ADC convention moves to event center following rejection claims. Wike denies foul play. Page 1 of the Observers Times. All right, let's look at the Daily Trust here, and still running with the lead, says against odds, ADC holds convention, and that's the bold lead story there. You might also want to still see that story. Court to rule on El Rufai's bail application today on page 6. Again, commander soldiers killed in Boko Haram ambush. All right, now to the Daily Global. We have no one is stopping opposition from functioning, says presidency. All right, let's look at Nigerian News Direct, and that's Ogun APC endorsed Yayi as consensus candidate for 2026 Guba, and that's on page 4. I never accepted solicited bribes, coming from Desiani, still on that matter, and that's on page 4 of the Nigerian News Direct. To the Daily Assets, we have ICPC slams fresh 9-count corruption charge on El Rufai. Allegations span 11 billion naira real deal, $1 million loan misuse, and illegal benefits. Page 2 of the Daily Assets. And then let's also look at that, but just so you note, JAMB adjust arrival time for 2026 UTME. That's still from Daily Asset. But moving forward, let's go to leadership. And leadership this morning says, well, some stories there above says northern leaders raise concerns over rising attacks. Tinubu doesn't want opposition to exist, and that should be on page 6. And then, of course, Wike clarifies Kubu bus terminal roof damage, says no structure collapsed on page 20. To the blueprints, we have Middle East crisis. FG cuts tariffs on vehicles, food, industrial inputs. Experts' law decision call for protection of local farmers, fear revenue loss. That starts on the front page and continues on page 8 of the blueprint newspaper.
All right, just interestingly, just below the masthead of the blueprint in sports says Olapade Lord's 10-year-old Aruna for table tennis feat in Luxembourg. That's the refreshing news. But over to Vanguard, Middle East war, how federal government is responding to economic shock, and that's from Edu. Policy missteps in trade systems may hurt consumers, experts say Naira stability comes at heavy cost at forex reserve declines, and that's what we find there.
And that's it for the front pages this morning on the dailies. Now, moving to our first talking point for the day. This is all over the front pages, starting with The Authority, The Standard Times, This Nigeria, Daily Sun, New Telegraph. Another commander, 6 soldiers killed by terrorist IED. And we're here again, gentlemen. Last time out, the Brigadier General's death didn't really cause so much, surprisingly, uproar in the country. Will this do any such?
Is that for me or for...
Let's have Will that do such this time?
It depends on who you are talking to.
I'm talking to Nigerians. Will that...
Of course, Nigerians have always reacted...
and the government.
With outrage whenever such level of sacrifice is made by officers and men of the armed forces. You recall the Nigerians, rallied around the armed forces when we lost a number of senior commanders, and this is not going to be different. But what bothers me all the time is that the government itself do not always show the kind of concern the government should show when they lose officers and men, especially of the levels we are losing now. I've always maintained that from the little I've read about the Civil War, the Nigeria-Biafra Civil War between 1967 and 1917, I do not think, from all the accounts I've read, all of the accounts I've read, and I've read quite a number of them, I do not think we lost this number of men during the Civil War, on both sides. Because most of the Nigerian army officers that defected to the Biafra side to fight for Biafra survived the war. I came back and reintegrated into the Nigerian army. Most of those fought on the Nigerian side survived and went on to become heads of state, heads of the army and all that. Very, very minimal casualty. So that we lost in 3 instances now, brigadier generals. Something we didn't lose during the Biafra. How could we have lost a brigadier? We didn't lose any commanding officer during the Biafra war. Yes. All of the commanding officers on the 3 divisions we had survived the war, from Muhammad to G.S. Jello, to Obasanjo himself, to, of course, Benjamin Adekunle, General, the man from Borno, that was his name now, Muhammad Shua. They all survived. They led the war successfully and came out successful. In fact, on the Biafra side, too, their commanding officers didn't die in the war. People like Joe Akuzia and others survived in the war. So I don't know the kind of war we are fighting. And we are losing this caliber, this level of senior military officers. Now, for every brigadier general that dies or a commanding officer at the level of lieutenant colonel that dies, you must be assured that a lot more rank and file soldiers also perished. That leaves me with one clear indication, and this is a warning to the Nigerian state, a clear warning. If the casualty figures in the Northeast continues like this for the next 2 years, and nothing changes the next 2 years, Boko Haram may declare a technical victory over the Nigerian state. And will be forced to negotiate and cede some part of Nigeria to them. This is the hard truth. Let nobody be mistaken. You can't be losing officers at this frequency. Let me tell you what it means. It means that these guys are draining our officers and men from only one theater of war. They are draining them. And the implication is that if you keep draining them like this, other theaters of conflict in Nigeria will not have enough troop strength to contain them. It's already a very fragile situation. Nobody needs to tell the managers of the Nigerian state, the leaders of the armed forces, that it is time to change tactics in that theater of war. Look, I know that those of them in the uniform, they think there is something about that uniform that makes them superior in intelligence to another person. But let me remind them that America assumed the upper hand in the Second World War not because of his khaki-wearing generals, but because of scientists led by Albert Einstein, the great physicist, who actually wrote a letter to President Roosevelt alerting him to the fact that Germany was on the verge, that's Germany, Hitler's Germany, was on the verge of developing a nuclear weapon. That America would do better to develop it first ahead of him, so as to have the upper hand in the Second World War. And so, heeding to that advice, President Roosevelt set up the Manhattan Project and domiciled the operational core of that scientific work in the University of California. It was there that they developed, scientists, non-scientists, developed the nuclear weapon for America, which put ahead of others during the war. What am I saying? Solutions to this problem can come from anywhere. The same solution to Nazi Germany, a crisis in the Second World War, came from scientists. The solution can come from journalists. It can come from academia. So open your ears, open your mind, and listen. You can't continue to fight asymmetrical warfare with a group of people when you are not trained to fight an asymmetrical warfare. Flip it to a symmetrical warfare. Drain that area of non-combatant. If you are not a member of Boko Haram, leave that entire combat zone now. And carry out proper military operation with surgical precision for a prolonged period of time, either bombardments and artillery clearance operations first, before endangering our troops to ambushes and all sorts of other violent activities by the bandits, because we're not prepared for that. You flip it. That is the best way to do. You can't be doing the same thing over and over again for more than 15 years and expect a different result.
All right, Dr. Maho, from the 10th of April, today is the 14th. First headline was Nigeria's current security architecture not working. 2 days ago, same story on insecurity. And of course, yesterday, we still had the headline leaning on insecurity and the NAF airstrikes and the bombardment or the attack on the Borno market. This morning, we are still looking at insecurity, and we still have the conversation on losing soldiers, insecurity, terrorists kill Colonel, 6 soldiers during raid on military base in Borno. This has been the consistent headline for week on to week on. Do you think that there is something that perhaps they're not reading the room? And like Majid said, perhaps a different approach and a different interpretation to what's happening?
You know, what I see is a regurgitation of the same old statement when crisis of this nature happens. The same, like yesterday, to crown the event and crisis in Borno State by the killing of an army colonel and 16 soldiers, is the same emergency meeting being held by Mr. President with his service chiefs. You hold meetings, emergency meetings, every time there's a crisis. Your approach is reactionary rather than being proactive. And at the end of the day, this is the same cycle of event over and over again, whether in this administration or in previous administration. So how do we expect to get a different result? How am I now convinced that the administration is tackling the problem headlong? How won't I, as a Nigerian, feel despondent, hopeless, when last week the U.S. Embassy in Nigeria evacuated its head office as a result of the security situation in the country and gave a further directive to its citizens of about 23 states in the Federation that they shouldn't go, there should be a no-go area for them because of the security situation in the country. If a country like the United States, that we all know has a very high network of intelligence gathering, not just in Nigeria, all over the world, could issue such an advisory to its citizens in Nigeria, it's ominous. It foretells that something is happening that we are not, as a country, paying attention to. And shortly after that adversary, it seemed as if the momentum of attack by terrorists in the Northwest is on the increase. Last week we were here talking about the felling of a Brigadier General Brima, right? Okay. And today we are talking about the felling again of a Lieutenant Colonel. And it is instructive that we know, because I made a post on it on my social media.
And it seems they become targets.
The point, what you should pay attention to, what do you think it takes to get to a Brigadier General? What does it take? It's like I can ask, when you look at the layer of security, of men, equipment,
intelligence,
that it takes for you to be able to target and actually hit a colonel or a Brigadier General. That should tell you something. And all of us as a country should be worried about that situation. And like Mojid rightly said, look, in the 3 years that Nigeria fought a civil war, on either side, not one commanding officer or a general was felled in that crisis. 3 years, nothing like that happened in a declared war. But what we are having is an undeclared war. And top-ranking personnel of the army are being felled like flies. So if a brigadier general, a colonel, a commanding officer can be, who am I to, how can I feel safe?
Because
why won't I pay attention to the travel advisory by the U.S. Embassy?
Indeed.
These are questions that should bother us as a country, not the politics of 2027.
Because, you know, I'm stretching this because of the lead from the Daily Monitor, and it says insecurity can end in 6 months if federal government is serious, coming from Ndume. But here he says such incidents highlight deeper operational challenges, and that's talking about loss of military personnel, which you've just actually mentioned.
Yeah, loss of personnel. Travel advisory. You look at everything surrounding it. And some of the stories we hear, when you talk about operational issues, we've even heard stories that Boko Haram, ISWAP, they are using armed drones to target the Nigerian army. That alone should tell me that if Boko Haram can lay hands on armed drones to target...
Well, no one is safe.
What kind of equipment is the Nigerian army using in its operation against... If from the story we heard, the allegation that an armed personnel carrier had mechanical issues. And again, Adora, when that story broke last week, about the felling of a brigadier general, and we did see, you know, the base. Did you take your time to look at the base? The base is completely in the middle of nowhere, exposed. There's no parameter enforcement, which means it's just what we saw is just an open place, and that is supposed to be a forward operating base. It's not protected. So the terrorists can come in at any time and attack and retreat back into the forest. And one thing that always bothers me when the army releases is, when things and they make releases in relation to the crisis in the Northwest, they always use the word repel. And I think it is about time we pay attention to that word, repel. Why should our military always be repelling attack and not taking the war to the terrorists? You're always waiting, sitting like dogs. And when they attack you, if you are lucky, you manage to repel them. And if you are unlucky, you are decimated, including high-ranking, you know, commanding officers and generals. That's the situation we find ourselves. We cannot say this enough. We have to go on talking about it. There has to be new thinking, not this old, worn-out thinking. and reactionary approach to the insecurity situation in the country. And when that happens, every Nigerian will begin to see it. But as of today, I'm not seeing it.
Let's see some other stories and dynamics to maybe the conversation on insecurity and move from there to politics. Of course, ADC made its frontline intro on some of the headline pages, like the Observer Times and the Daily Trust says ADC convention moves to event center following rejection claims. Majid, how do you look at this?
Just before I go into that, let me end on this security issue by saying, I hope the Chief of Defense Staff and other high-ranking members of the leadership of the Armed Forces and Security community in Nigeria now know, by now, that these are not prodigal sons, and these are not our brothers. We do not, as citizens, we do not want to hear again from that level anybody describing terrorists as other prodigal sons or our brothers. We don't want to hear it. And when we hear it again, we'll come out here and call them out. It's our right. It's painful. Now that your own men, your own commanders are falling in battlefield, you should never, ever again refer to those people as prodigal sons. It's unfortunate. You should now know that you are fighting people that are posing existential threat to the Nigerian state. And if you do not do anything quickly about this, all of us will find ourselves in Sudan. Now, talking about politics, well, the back and forth, Mr. Wike, the Minister of FCT, has said, they didn't apply to me, nor did they apply to the management of the place. ADC has said that they applied and they were denied. The good thing is that they found somewhere to do it, right? Yeah. And so it doesn't matter where they do it. What matters is that they are going to do it. So I think it's a good one for them to do it, pending the decision of the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court is hearing their case today. Yeah. So when they do it, and maybe the judgment goes in their favor, it means they've already done the convention. So it beats, the timeline for completion of all of these activities. So I think they are in order, and it's good that they are able to pull this through.
But is it not necessary, because we talk about unknown leadership right now, INEC is not going to be there to oversee the convention and all as it is. Isn't that going to even affect them going forward, also looking at whatever the decision of the court is today?
No, whatever the decision of the court is binding on INEC. INEC, I've read so much about this controversy over the role of INEC when it comes to the internal processes in political parties. It's actually limited. There are judgments that support that. INEC role is just to, when it comes to convention, is to be notified. And I believe that ADC must have done that, notify INEC. Whether that is what the rule says, notify. Whether they now send people to monitor, I don't think it has any legal implication. That notification, if they satisfied it, they may as well go ahead and hold their convention. The issue of the ADC not being able to hold its convention and INEC body language, which seems to indicate that they are an interested party in how the ADC, in how the ADC is run, is not good for 2027. And I hope the ruling party, the judiciary, should do what is necessary in order to calm down the tension. If ADC is denied participation by any means, whether by the judiciary or by INEC and its antics, from fully presenting candidates for 2027, it won't all go well for our democracy.
Again, and again, looking at what the presidency said in one of the leads, it says the presidency is not stopping opposition from functioning, but even going ahead, with their allegation that they were denied, going ahead to move it to another event center, I think the Rainbow Event Center, there's also this, grapevine that they're also being perhaps intimidated to not want to give that venue out to the ADC to hold the convention. Now, in view of what you said in terms of credible, opposition, what does this even do for the Nigerian psyche, that opposition is threatened not just for the sake of democracy, but for the sake of participation and voter apathy ahead of 2027?
Yeah. See, what do I believe? Is it the body language of those in power, the ruling party, or what the opposition is saying, ADC, Labour Party, PDP, and others? What should I believe? What many Nigerians see from the body language of the ruling party is that they don't want an opposition. That's what we see with what is happening in, whether they accept that they are responsible or not responsible, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. What we see happening within the Labour Party, the PDP, which are major opposition party, and now that crisis have been transferred to the ADC. It shows that it may be the hand of Esau, voice of Jacob situation. So anybody that actually say, look, what Tinubu wants in 2027 is a coronation, not an election. No, the facts, the evidence we see speaks for itself. So I do hope with about 32 governors in its coffers, Tinubu should be confident enough to go into 2027 believing that, look, you have the block of 32 states behind you. What are you afraid of? Allow opposition to thrive. Allow people to be able to have the opportunity to choose who they want. That is what I see. Anything outside that is a danger to this democracy.
But the ADC caucus has also called in the House of Rep for the resignation of Amiputan as the INEC chair, calling him partisan. I mean, Majid, I don't know if you look at that part, because again, where there is distrust and lack of believability, the process is also skewed.
You know, when it comes to INEC chairman, or the position of the INEC chairman, I think the only president in Nigeria that took that decision to commit class suicide by appointing somebody that was constitutionally, in terms of intendment, spirit of the letters of the law, fit for purpose, I think it was Goodluck Jonathan. When he appointed Atahir Jega from the CSO bloc, somebody he did not share ethnic, religious, geographical, or any other form of filial association with. In fact, Jonathan did not meet Jega before he was nominated and confirmed. They didn't know each other. It was simply a decision to say, look, if we want to substantially implement the wage report, let us try this pattern of leadership for INEC. And the man went on to actually revolutionize our electoral system to the point that an incumbent lost an election. And I've always contended that was Goodluck Jonathan's greatest achievement in power, to conduct an election in which he lost. It was not weakness, it was strength of character. Strength of character in upholding the people's wish to the ballot. But that example has been long abandoned because subsequent presidents didn't want to follow that same one. In fact, if you observe, despite benefiting from the election that was conducted by Jega, have you ever wondered why President Buhari didn't offer Jega a return ticket? Because he knows that this man is from the CSO world. And then the person who appointed him can lose election. How about me? He was going to reappoint him. So he brought first, he attempted to bring his own relative. I was in INEC, remember? And then he brought somebody from his own northern half of the country. Now, today, President Tinubu is also definitely Jonathan is the same. What I'm trying to make is, that can be neutralized and defeated by people power. And that is why I keep telling the opposition, enough of this ranting. Go and put your house in order. Go and tell the Nigerian people exactly what you intend to do differently from these other guys that are there now, in order to excite them to turn out in large numbers and excite the people power in them enough to neutralize whatever anybody wants to do. This argument of whether this man should resign or should not resign, I know he will not resign. I know he will not be fired. Because if it is true, I don't know, if it is true that he's an APC sympathizer or supporter or a member, you should know that the president who appointed him knew all of that before he appointed him. So it's full time for you to tell him how to resign or for the president to fire him. No. But one thing I know for sure is, even the next stamps are people that are Nigerians. Police officers are people that are Nigerians. If you have a message for the Nigerian people, those in INEC, those in the police force, will stand by and make sure that the people's wish prevail at the ballot so that their own future will be better. So the onus for me...
It's the office of the citizen, yeah.
And the opposition. They should go and get their acts together.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, for coming this morning. Dr. Austin Mao and Alhaji Majid Dahiru, thank you so much for joining us on the papers.
Thank you, as always. Thank you. All right, we're going to our first talking point this morning. Remember when we started, we briefed you about the World Bank on Nigerian economy, and that's where we'll be going to our first direction, but that will be after this break. Stay with us.
The stories now break online. Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, Official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
Focus Nigeria. It's a huge task, but we take it on.
Where is the law? National Assembly is not doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria. It is America that is doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
So people put people in poverty deliberately, deliberate misplacement of priorities, and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of
the former president, what I know is that he has not turned his membership card. He has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal with.
There's no shying away from the issues.
The system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT.
And welcome back to Kakaaki, the African Voice. It's time to take our first interview for today, and it is on World Bank on Nigerian economy. And we have Dr. Muda Yusuf, Chief Executive Officer, Center for Promotion of Public Enterprises, joining us virtually. Good morning, Dr. Muda Yusuf.
Good morning, and
good morning
to all our viewers.
All right, thank you so much.
You seem to have a frown on your face. Maybe just lighten up a bit.
Well,
thank you.
Let's begin with the whereabouts of the World Bank report in question that's tagged Nigeria Development Update. Now, that report has been taken down from their website. What do we make of that? Why is that?
Well, there were quite a number of issues or complaints or pushback about the contents of the report, especially with respect to trade policy advisory that were contained in the report. And the advisory that was a bit contentious was around the liberalization of trade. Trade liberalization is good, import is good, but it is important to situate the whole concept of trade liberalization within the context of the economy in which you are trying to, advise. Now, the contentious components of it were the areas in which the World Bank was advising that we should be issuing more import licenses for the importation of fuel. We should be encouraging more import of food. At least those two areas were quite contentious. Of course, there are quite a number of areas too, like encouraging further tightening of monetary policy and so on. They are contentious because, every economy wants to industrialize. Every economy wants to encourage manufacturing. And one of the ways to encourage manufacturing is also to protect your industries. especially when you're already making some progress in particular sectors. In this particular case, we are talking about the petroleum industry, and we're also talking about agriculture. Now, in terms of petroleum industry, I mean, specific reference was made to the Dangote refinery, that is the only one, and so on and so forth. And therefore, there has to be more importation. Whereas the argument of some of us is that it is better to encourage more production than to be encouraging more importation. That way, you're able to strengthen the capacity of your economy. You're able to ensure that you have energy security and food security. So basically, those were the major, contentious issues around the report. Otherwise, the report is generally okay. The report acknowledged all the reforms, the progress that has been made with our foreign reserves, with our exchange rate, with our external reserves, with our, balance of trade and so on, which is good. But we need to localize policies, even in the advanced economies, which are even the base of all this IMF and World Bank. There's some level of protectionism.
All right.
Take the United States, for instance.
Okay.
Look at the level of protectionism that Trump has brought to protect industries in the United States. So those were the major, contentious issues in the report.
All right, so let me take it from where you talked about the World Bank, because you were quoted as saying that the World Bank's recommendations are inconsistent with Nigeria's current economic realities, reforms and recovery efforts. Now, let's hear you in perspective. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I meant by that is the fact that we are focusing on industrialization. We are trying to promote self-reliance. We are trying to ensure that we create more jobs. We are trying to ensure that we have energy security and food security. Those are the major aspirations of government, and rightly so. Because when you are too dependent, you make the economy very, very vulnerable. Now, look at countries now that are heavily dependent on energy imports around the world. You can imagine what they are going through now. In some countries now, there are protests. In some countries, they are rationing fuel. In some countries, they are even, telling you when to go out, when not to go out. When you can switch on your AC, when you cannot switch. These are consequences of overdependence. And even before I even got here, we were able to ensure that we are a lot more self-reliant in terms of petroleum products. Look at the crisis we went through when we were almost 100% dependent on importation of petroleum products. We were spending between $10 to $15 billion annually importing petroleum products. That is not the way to progress or to advance an economy. So when we are making progress in terms of that level of self-reliance with Dangote refinery and other refineries, I think we should be encouraging more refineries to come on board rather than be encouraging more import licenses. So that is the point I was, and again, in terms of food, I mean, you need to go up north and see the kind of, challenges that farmers have, not even only up north, everywhere around the country. I know that the president meant well when he allowed, the importation of maize, rice, and all of that as a temporary measure to ease, the pressure of prices, food prices on the citizens. But again, it has consequences. A lot of farmers are complaining that they have incurred huge losses as a result of that temporary importation. So these are the concerns. Even in agriculture, we need to be encouraging more domestic production than to be encouraging more imports. So those are the major cardinal development objectives that we are focused on. So when we have this kind of recommendation that is now advising liberalization of food imports, liberalization of importation of petroleum products, it runs counter to those development objectives. So that was the basis of that particular argument.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dr. Musa Yusuf there. Now coming to the studio, we have joining us Dr. Billy Gillis Harry, National President, Petroleum Products Retail Outlets Owners Association. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you for having us here.
Now, we've asked Dr. Muda Yusuf a question about why the World Bank, removed the report in question tagged Nigeria Development Update from their website. Can you give us an answer to that as well?
Well, I cannot give an answer to that because the World Bank is doing its own thing, and whatever they find suitable to their own actions, I think it's not left for us to start to, second guess. But as far as I'm concerned, Nigeria is endowed enough with intellectuals, knowledgeable people, and we can do our own thing by ourselves. And we should begin to look at issues that grow us from our own perspective and run our own shows, get our own programs, and have less dependence on international organizations such as that, because I don't think that they mean the best for us.
All right, let's look at in perspective. I mean, what you say, Petro, and how you support the World Bank suggestion of the issuance of more fuel import licenses to address the high petrol product prices and also perhaps curb inflation. But some say it's the liberalized fuel import regime of the past that is responsible for the part of the economic situation that Nigeria faces today. I mean, do you want to explain to that?
Well, opinions differ in different climes, different seasons, and different times. When something is being done as the vogue at the time, if those who are in the saddle of authority do not take time to study the effects for today and tomorrow, chances are that we will always have, post showing for it. Now, for instance, today, even with industrialized situations like America, for instance, I mean, recently as 6-7 months ago, America imported at least one cargo from Dangote refinery for refined gasoline. So they have a lot of refineries there. So that has not in any way impacted on their domestic refining capacity. So my thing is that we should always move to correct the errors of yesterday, not to dwell on them.
Okay, now let's move to Dr. Muda Yusuf as well. Now, we have that the World Bank and Dr. Harris Petroan appear, to make desirous to make petroleum products available, as opposed to this seeming shortfall in supply that is causing high prices. You're opposed to that, and why is that so?
No, well, I agree with Dr. Billy. Of course, there is nothing significantly wrong around about imports and all of that. Every country imports. But what is important is that we have to be focused on what our strategy as a country is and what we want to achieve as a country. Now, if you talk to manufacturers generally in the country, the challenges of production is overwhelming, it's enormous. This is not just only about petroleum products, it's about all products. And that is why, as a matter of deliberate policy, the government often have a framework to protect domestic industries. Even in the US that Dr. Billy alluded to, there are protection mechanisms. You can see the way Trump has been throwing all manner of tariffs all over the place. It's because they have suffered deindustrialization in the United States. A lot of their industries have closed down because they were adopting too much of a liberal trade regime. So even if we have to import, there has to be safeguards for domestic industries. Whether we are talking about petroleum products, whether we are talking about pharmaceuticals, whether we are talking about food. We need safeguards to protect. So even if we have to import, let us have a fiscal policy regime that will protect domestic industries. Because in the long run, self-sufficiency, less import dependence is good for the economy generally. Imagine we didn't have the Dangote refinery and we were importing all the fuel. Where would we have been today in terms of the crisis now that we are having globally? Where some countries are even banning the export of petroleum products because they want to conserve and protect their own citizens, just as you have during COVID. Once you have a crisis, you are on your own. Even the country that you think will get the product may not make the product available. If you look at the recent fiscal policy document that was released by government, you will see a range of protectionist measures that are there to support industries, whether in food, whether in pharmaceutical, whether in cables. A whole lot of protectionist measures are there. So that is what we are saying. If we have to import, no problem, but there has to be safeguards for domestic industries. So that is the fundamental issue.
Dr. Harry, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think Dr. Lawal's opinions are not too far-fetched. He completely agrees with the need to expand the petroleum product, availability space. So I don't see any thing wrong with that. That has not at any time bedeviled the fact that we are extremely grateful to Dangote Refinery for this very, very strategic investment that he has done. But of course, at the end of the day, there will be overwhelming need, for products coming from one source. So there's the need to liberalize, to expand. And, import is not really what Petron will support, for 1 year. It would like imports just only to augment what is locally being produced. So what is actually needed right now, more than anything else, is a massive, attack on ensuring that our local refineries that were operating since 1979 start to roar back to life. The Port Harcourt refineries, the two of them there, the Kaduna refinery, the Warri refinery. And if NNPC is not doing something very strategic and very speedy about it, we can actually help. And that is the point we're making. One person don't have the whole knowledge in the world to achieve any great things. We, as grassroots, we are the ones who have taken from all the refineries. Even Dangote's products are taken, they end up in our retail outlets. Okay. So that's why we are grateful to Dangote for this investment. And of course, our analysis will always keep Dangote refinery top on the list. But we also think that imports should be liberalized to be able to help in ensuring that there are no overwhelming supply needs that will be the reason why prices will fluctuate and fluctuate very high. Because once supply is shorter than demand, the natural attitude economically is that prices will soar. So as far as the domestic production space is concerned, on my way, I just looked at all the new import regime that the president has done, and I continue to say that this president that we have, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has great policy strides with a heart to make Nigeria a greater place. But we need to all help him. Everybody that is saddled with responsibility should be able to do what. Those who are advising should advise well. Those who are going to implement should implement well. So those policies that are read out today, obviously, they are going to give support to local industries. But should we depend on import for a long time? No. I don't encourage that, because at the end of the day, we'll be exporting our wealth to some other countries and importing poverty to us. So we need to be careful about how we implement some of these policies. But at this time, even in the near future, when refineries that are being built have not started working, and the local refineries, we are just, the other day we ran into some investors from some foreign country that were looking at Port Harcourt refinery. We're very happy about that. But that's the end of the story. I mean, that refinery belongs to Nigerians. So we should know on a daily basis exactly what's been done in those refineries.
So what must be done? Because I hear you loud and clear. And I remember that at the Olubri lecture series that just happened, Energy Forum, yes, one of the things you spoke about was how Nigeria is targeting 3 million barrels per day, at least by 2030, rising from the almost 2 million barrels in 2027. And I hear you fixing the local refineries. Do you think there's a political will? Because we've had this conversation with you time and time again on fixing the local refineries.
Well, I really don't think that, and sometimes it's difficult to say some things the way you know them, because also you have to be cautious of the implications therefrom. But if today, me, Billy Harris, saddled with responsibility to make NNPC work, I'll make it work. One, I have the resources at my disposal, and I should have both the political will and the desire of patriotic zeal and value to make those refineries to work. So I don't see what is the political tone that should make it not to work, except those who are saddled with the responsibility are either working with a corrupt intention, or they do not have any value for their mother country, their fatherland. But if you know that you are given an assignment you can't do, just walk away. Just say, I cannot do the job. So I don't believe that politics is what in any way is keeping these refineries not to work. Those refineries worked. As far as I know, even way back in 1995, when I was very seriously involved in export of refined products such as LPFO, HPFO, those refineries were working. Kaduna was working. I was taking a lot of LPFO and HPFO from Kaduna Refinery and bring them all the way to the south. So we don't see, I personally don't see any political undertone in making it not to work. Because one, from, I think from Obasanjo, the office of Petroleum Minister started shifting, to the office of the presidency. And we haven't seen any change in how these things operate. As I thought, if you recall, one of the interviews I had when President Mohamed Buhari was on Sado, I said they cannot, say because there's corruption in the oil, then they must have to bring petroleum ministry to him, because he'll be saddled with too much responsibility. And I think it's the same thing that's going on. We need to free that space and have people who can give 24/7 time to it to make sure that these refineries work. And we can make it work.
Okay, but let's go back virtually to Dr. Muda Yusuf now. Must Nigeria implement all of these, World Bank recommendations? Don't we have think tanks who we can look to implement something that we can call our own instead of hopping with whatever the World Bank is saying as it is?
No, well, we have a responsibility as a country to distill whatever recommendations are coming from either IMF or the World Bank and see what works and what doesn't work. It is not all the policies of the World Bank or IMF that suits our own peculiar situation. And we have the intellectual capacity to know what will work here and what will not work here. For instance, when the World Bank talks about the issue of trade liberalization we are talking about now, we know the implication of that for industrialization, for a developing economy, for an economy that wants to industrialize, that wants to also produce, which is the goal and aspiration of every country. So we have to define the limits of how much of the policies will be adopted. When we are talking about maybe floating of the currency, we also need to define the limits. Because the World Bank and IMF is all about market-driven policies. Market-driven policies are nice, but they have their limitations. That is why in economics, we talk of market failure. Any situation where you discover that there's a market failure, government intervention becomes necessary. So it is for us to look at all of this and see what policies we can adopt, what policies of the World Bank that we can modify, and what policies we can outrightly reject. And I think the government has been doing that in some ways, because you see a few interventions here and there, which are sometimes not in full alignment with what the World Bank or IMF wants. That is what should happen. It is important to localize policies It is important to contextualize policy, put policies in the context of your own environment. That is very key, both in economics, even in political models and whatever. You look at your environment to know what will work. So that is what will happen, and I think that is what will encourage the government to always do. Just as Dr. Billy said, we have a pool of intellectuals here. We have business people who understand our environment, who also understand what is best for us. I mean, they are not forcing us to adopt any policy. We're a sovereign country, and we need to drive our economy towards economic sovereignty so that we are not unduly dependent on other economies or even intellectuals outside of our country.
All right, thank you so much, Munda Yusuf, Chief Executive Officer, Center for Promotion of Public Enterprises. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Private enterprises, actually, not public.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Billy Jill Harris, thank you for making it as well, the time that you spent bringing insights to some of the issues. National President, Petroleum Product Retail Outlets Owners Association has been with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So now we'll go on a short break as we'll make our way to 8 a.m. Yes, for Kakaaki Socials. To stay with us.
Don't miss anything from our real-time updates and exclusive content. Follow and participate in discussions on live TV studio programs to shape the narratives. Subscribe, engage, and share from AIT.live at AIT_online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT. On air, online, on live.
Focus Nigeria. It's a huge task, but we take it on.
I think that is the law. National Assembly is not doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria. It is America that is doing hearing on insecurity in Nigeria.
Monday to Friday on Focus Nigeria, we identify the nagging issues.
So people put people in poverty deliberately, deliberate misplacement of priorities, and brought people on their knees to suffer.
We seek answers to the tough challenges.
And because of the former president, what I know is that he has not turned his membership card. He has not been attending your meeting.
Leave that to us to deal.
There's no shying away from the issues.
The system is held accountable. The leaders are accountable for the funds, for the resources that they manage.
No sitting on the fence.
The same thing that made you live where you are may confront you.
Focus Nigeria, 10 a.m., Monday to Friday on AIT.
Hello, everyone. Excellent morning to you. This is Kakaaki Social. I am Onosherena Obozege, and it's the second hour of the program this Tuesday morning. What's on the street of social media you want to ask? We'll begin with the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, that has dismissed claims that any political party was denied access to any venue that they could approve in Abuja. And you know that the Eagle Square has been in conversation, and they have been saying that they were denied access to that, as well as the National Sports Stadium here in Abuja. But the FCT minister says nothing like that ever happened. We'll listen to him, and then we'll see the flyer or the acknowledgement copy of the request by the ADC submitted to the office of the minister. But we'll hear him first.
Nobody, not one, wrote any letter to use the Eagle Square. I called the GMD, there's nothing like that. There's no way we would deny them because we collect revenue from that. Why would we stop them from holding their company to our business? They pay, we have the money to do the project work, but when you get that as the character of leadership that ADC, every time telling lies just to give a bad publicity during the government.
Wike yesterday saying that they never reached out to him, he's not aware of anything. But before reaction, to go back to that letter, fantastic. This is an acknowledgement letter that has been put out by the ADC saying that it was acknowledged on the 7th of April 2025 by the office of the minister. They had written to him, and this is the copy they got. And now the minister says he has no knowledge of it, so who approved it? Definitely not the minister acknowledged it, but is it that it was not taken to his office for approval or the necessary, the relevant authority to go ahead for this? They had written for the use of Eagle Square, Abuja, for ADC National Convention, but the minister says they did not write this. Then how did we get the stamp from the office of the minister of the FCT, as you would see on your left right there? Now let's take another reaction to this coming from an authority from there. What had happened was, well, they said they were denied Eagle Square. They were also denied the Velodrome at the National Stadium. But after that, they went for a private facility. And that private facility, the management also came to them to say, we are being threatened and we may have to refund your money. Unfortunately for them, they had a deal and signed an agreement that that will not be the case. So this is it right here. Bolaji Abdullahi says, alert. After paying all the fees required, setting up for our convention tomorrow, which is now today, the owner of Rainbow Event Center has just informed us that he has come under pressure from the FCDA, Administrator of FCT, Nyesom Wike, that if he allows the ADC the use of his facilities, his license will be revoked. But we have already signed the contract with him. We will hold our convention tomorrow as planned at the Rainbow Event Center. All right, let's take Atiku's reaction to this. It says, a report from our spokesperson of our great party, which exposes the plan of the government and its agent to revoke the license of Rainbow Event Center for the singular offense of hosting the African Democratic Congress Convention slated for today. He actually did this earlier, midnight. It says, Tuesday, April 14, 2026 is a shameful and cowardly abuse of public office. Let it be said without equivocation, coercing a private business owner to deny a lawfully registered opposition party the use of a venue is not governance, it is not politics, it is the naked conduct of a regime that has lost the argument, lost the people, and now reaches for the boot because it has nothing else left. I just took those two paragraphs there. And now to you, Direct Poll says, this just shows the integrity of our leaders lie when there is evidence of an acknowledged copy of the letter submitted. I was expecting for the minister to have used administrative process to cover up such a shame. Also, Diana Abasi says, you must find a better excuse to postpone this Congress before morning. This one sounds lazy, that the private facility was denying them access again to say that their license would be revoked if they allow the convention go on. That's what Diana Abasi is referring to. So more reactions, and another reaction from Very Angry Bird. He brought back this AM Yerima's picture, and let's see that before we move to the next story. He says, let ADC call Lieutenant Yerima to stand in front of there. Wike would disappear. I'm not sure what this means, but this is a reaction from Very Angry Bird on the space of X. So he's saying that if Yerima is there, nothing would go wrong. All right, then let's go to our next story, which would be that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, he's saying that what they will do to ascertain whether the tweets and alleged posts attributed to the national chairman, Professor Joash Amupiton, is his or are his authentic posts. They will have to conduct a forensic audit using experts, and this was said by the Commission's Director of ICT, Lawrence Bayode. He said that the issue is being treated as a serious concern, and they know that this poses a great threat to elections coming next year, but so they will have to conduct forensic expert and engage forensic experts to see the authenticity of the post right there. Let's just listen to him before your thought.
I will not base my judgment on screenshot. I will not allow that to guide my conclusion. I know that the commission will engage a third-party forensic expert to also look at this, and that will guide I think that will guide the conclusion of the commission.
All right, let's see what you make to that proposal or the plan by INEC to see if the posts are authentically their chairman's. Political parody depot says that's great, but are there brooms in the cupboards of the forensic expert? Number 2, would the forensic expert be submitting their result electronically or manually? Would the final result be as declared by INEC or as voted in the forensic booth? Questions. Another reaction to this is coming from Okpe Oluwa. Says, hire forensic expert. What happened to petitioning the police and DSS? INEC is unserious. It will be a massive failure if they don't fish out those behind the fake account. Their credibility is at stake. And final thoughts to this one would be from Harry. It says, Aluta continua. Look at the spelling of Aluta there, and I hope that you could see. It says, just make it a public event and let everyone bring their evidence or evidences. When I go shock, say, no be everything person don't post. He was the one who made that post right there that was highlighting the result of the email address and phone numbers of the INEC chairman used in opening that account that the Professor Joash Amopiton is denying that he never used that account. Now we'll go away from that and highlight another story, which will be about the protest that erupted in Abuja yesterday, Monday. It's by retired police officers that are protesting their pensions and benefits. They say that they are aggrieved retirees. They marched towards the presidential villa, and they were demanding that they are removed from the contributory pension scheme that they call Wuru Wuru arrangement. Now, the demonstration was met with resistance from their colleagues who are still serving, but let's see some seconds of that protest yesterday in Abuja.
We don't agree, yes, we don't agree. We don't agree, yes, we don't agree. We don't agree, oh, we don't agree. We don't agree, oh, we don't agree. We don't agree, oh, we don't agree.
All right, let's see what you make of this protest yesterday. We'll take some reactions. One from Chika. It says, you better agree, oh, when we call for the betterment of this country, the same politicians that is maltreating you were your God some time ago. Another reaction to this from Hemi of Luxury. It says, so now waiting this current police officers go see where them retire. If person will fight for good governance now them you go see with armored tank, they fight citizens where they fight for good governance. And final reaction to this one, Solek says, nothing kill existing morale when you see your retired colleagues complaining and looking frustrated due to incompetence of the government. Well, they said another arm, which says that, well, there's really no arm, really. They said they will be protesting also come April 20, that they will be the real agitators, not the fake agitators. Is there factions as well in the retired police body or something? What is going on with factions across our world around this place? But then let's look at another story which we reviewed this morning, and your reactions, some of them will be coming here from our Facebook, Africa Independent TV. This one will be that the commanding officer of troops in Sector 3, Joint Task Force Northeast Operation Hadinkai, has been killed by an improvised explosive device, IED, that was planted by insurgent in Muguno area of Borno State. The Information Officer Headquarters Joint Task Force Northeast Operation Hadinkai, Lieutenant
Colonel Sani Uba said that the officer died alongside 6 other personnel while attempting to personally assess the situation at the location. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu on Monday held a closed-door meeting at the presidential villa here in Abuja with security chiefs. And we were aware that we had the Chief of Defense Staff, General Olufemi Oluyede, and a French general in what sources describe as part of intensified security collaboration. The president also convened an emergency security meeting with service chiefs and heads of intelligence agencies to review Nigeria's security situation. Those present there will learn that they include Chief of Defense Staff, Chief of the Army, Navy, and Air Staff, the Director General of the DSS, the DG of the NIA, and the Inspector General of Police. May the souls of the departed again rest in peace. All right, let's see what you make of this again. I don't know how this feels and how this meets us, but John always says another ambush and loss of a senior officer. With all these brazen acts by these lunatics, we still come out to the open to advocate for amnesty for them because they are prodigal brothers. Continue. Another reaction. Koki says it's so shameful and unfortunate that Boko Haram, a terrorist organization, has killed more high-ranking military officers than the civil war of the 1960s. Nigeria, irredeemable. Now we'll go to Rino Odwala. She says, breaking, terrorists killed Nigerian Army Colonel I.A. Muhammad and others in Mogno, Borno State. This year alone, Brigadier General Hossein Ibrahima, Lieutenant Colonel Umaru Farouk, Lieutenant Colonel S.R. Iliasu, Commanding Officer Umaru Ibrahim Riga, and hundreds of soldiers gone under Tinubu. And yes, some more thoughts will now go to our live chat on Africa Independent TV. Nelson says, Biafra war was a conventional war, which the military are trained for, while military war is an asymmetric war, which the military are not trained for. Strategies for asymmetric war different from conventional war. Another thought, two in one now. Michael Movudu says, what's the use of our Tucano jet and weapons purchased by Buhari? Even Jonathan bought same. And Victor says, I'm wondering if Nigeria is winning war against insurgency on paper, as the APC government keeps deceiving Nigerians while the bandits are winning in the battlefield. Where are the U.S. Army in the country? All right, those will be your thoughts and your reactions right there. It's some money now that affects everyone. The federal government says that it has approved a new set of fiscal policy measure for this year, 2026, and that's aimed at boosting economic growth and supporting local industries. Under the new policy, import duties have been reduced on key items such as vehicles, rice, palm oil, and sugar moves, expected to ease costs and improve access to essential goods. At the same time, the government is introducing new taxes and proactive measures to strengthen local production as well as to reduce dependence on import. Now, this policy is contained in a circular signed by the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, and it replaces the 2023 fiscal guidelines. And I have to mention that it takes effect, or it already took effect from April 1 this year, 2026. And according to the government, the changes are part of Nigeria's alignment with ECOWAS Common External Tariff and are diagnosed or designed to promote growth in critical sectors of the economy.
Is this good news for you? This is what was sent out by the office right there. So let's bring in your reactions and see what you make of this development. The guy says, campaign don't start. You people have been fighting inflation since you came in. You didn't do this. Rather, you tightened the monetary policy rate that hurt businesses badly. All of a sudden, you have realized that people-centric policies like this can also fight inflation. Nice one, the guy says. Wahala Digest says, this looks good on paper, but history suggests lower import duties often leads to more import. That means foreign goods may become even cheaper, making it harder for our local businesses to compete, even with reduced raw material costs. Another thought also will be from X, and it is from another user who is also reacting to this development from X as well. Chike says, what about cement? Cut the excise duty on cement to the barest minimum, so local producers don't have any excuse for the current high price. There is serious housing deficit. People are hardly building, hence pressure on existing facilities and exorbitant rent. I mean, that exorbitant rent right there. Chike is speaking for everybody, at least me. Another thought to this one coming from X as well. Let's see who is speaking next and what they are saying in reaction to the federal government cutting import duties and then introducing new taxes. This user, Funa, says, every time all we get is a breakdown of statistics that things are getting better. These are the same statistics President Bola Ahmed Tinubu said, na statistics we go chop. Sadly, these statistics are not reflecting on everyday life of a Nigerian. Over 150 million people are multi-dimensionally poor. Fix it or leave it. But we have another user, definitely from the other side of the room. Alagba says, they said Tinubu doesn't care about Nigerians. Where are the haters now? Mass transit buses, 0%. Electric vehicles, 0%. Manufacturing machinery, 0%. This man is literally building a country, and una see the wine on Twitter with your picture of big flag in bio. So those are the conversations right there. Let's have our final story, which is from the weekend, and it's of a worshiper that is faulting tax education in her church. She said that her pastor had announced that there will be tax education in her church, and she's saying that instead of that she's questioning the church's decision to invite a tax expert to teach them. Instead, the church should be protesting hardship that has, been witnessed by everyone across Nigeria, according to her. Let's hear her.
On Sunday, our pastor said that next week Sunday, they'll bring somebody to teach us about the taxes, how it affects us, and how to make us fight for our taxes. And I was shocked. During Jonathan Rinji, Adeboye protested against the high price of fuel. How come during taxes now, the same Redeemed Church is telling us that they will invite people to teach us how to file our taxes? My flag was broadcasted. I will never forget it. It was so annoying. That Sunday, some people did not eat. Now, you cannot protect when it comes to taxes. Is the Redeemed Church benefiting from the APC government? They should tell us. They should tell us, let us know. It is annoying. I am angry at this point.
All right, let's see what you make of this. This user, Temitope, says, Pastor E.A. Adeboye led a prayer walk to pray against insecurity in the country, but many people in Nigeria refer to it as a protest. This shows that many of us do not clearly understand the difference between a prayer walk and a protest. Same people wants to eradicate ILTS. Oracle says the pastor has done terribly bad. The church is not a place to learn about tax, but Christ. Such pastor had left the teaching of the word and prayers to serve tables of bad governance. Acts chapter 6, verse 2. Okay, Oracle. Another thought says, Omotayo, it says, I blame your pastor for trying to enlighten you. I blame him. Okay, this user at Daytomiwa Johnson says, some call it turning God's house to a house of merchandise or pastor's compromise. Equipping state with practical knowledge like taxes is discipleship. Ephesians 4:11-12, not selling the gospel. Judge individuals, not the whole truth. And yes, everyone, that's the size of a package this morning. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Rena OBO on social media, and we are AIT_online. I'll see you again tomorrow. But would you protest that your pastor wants to educate you on tax in your church? Let me know on social media before we see tomorrow. Catch you.
Movie lovers, family entertainment fans, get ready for something big because Star Times is giving you Over Jara. For a limited time, when you recharge for 2 months, you get upgraded to the next bouquet free. That's more sports, more movies, more kids shows, more entertainment at no extra cost. Over Jara. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Kakaaki, now available in crayfish. Kakaaki, unwrap joy, unleash taste.
My baba, they always say, for market, every day gets your own wahala.
It's coming out.
Sometimes people go on scam you. But Baba say, no be by gra. You must cool down, dey sharp. Because with OPay payment, your money go enter sharp, no story. But inside market, anything fit happen. One day, we no see phone again. My baba remember OPay USSD lock. That's star 955 star 131 hash. Baba press am, lock account. From market woman to driver, from small boy to big man. Now OPay, they protect people like us. My baba fit sell, press phone, collect POS, and still they teach me price. And when they don't tire am, go just tap OPay night guard. We no fear for this our hustle life. Now OPay be the people payment shield.
Football lovers, movie lovers, family entertainment fans, get ready for something big because Star Times is giving you Over Jara. For a limited time, when you recharge for 2 months, you get upgraded to the next bouquet free. That's more sports, more movies, more kids shows, more entertainment at no extra cost. Over Jara. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
The stories. Don't miss anything from Online on X, AIT Online on Facebook, official AIT Live on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads on YouTube. Stay connected with AIT on air, online, on live.
Welcome back. I'm glad to know that you're still there. It's still Kakaaki, the African Voice on African Independent Television, and I hope you enjoyed Kakaaki Social as well there with Rena on Buzz again. All right, so we have our second interview to go at the moment, and we have a topic on state of the nation and Nigerian youth. And we have joining us in studio Jude Feromi, youth activist, public affairs commentator. Good morning, Jude.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, great to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
All right, now let's start off the conversation by, letting us know, why does it seem like Nigerian youths, despite their numbers, and energy, are unable to change the trajectory of the country at the moment?
Thank you very much. Again, in my opinion, the number of systemic barriers that hinder young people, despite the numbers, from aggregating and really helping to change the country. One of them is that point I mentioned. It looks like we are, I think there was a campaign sometimes about 60% or 65% of the population are young people. But when you look at these young people, these 65% of the population, and you start disaggregating, how many young people are graduates of universities, who enter the universities? How many of those young people are internally displaced young people? How many of those young people are young people that didn't even make it to universities as well? How many of those young people are in the informal economy, in the businesses? How many of those young people are in the rural areas, right? So the first challenge about aggregating youth along one single agenda is that young people have large numbers, but are across different demographics and different social statuses. The second is politically, right? And this is an argument I make every now and then. For every generation, I don't know if you guys remember, there's this Frantz Fanon quote that says every generation must, out of relative obscurity, discover its mission and then choose to betray it or fulfill it, right? But for every generation, including this generation, there are usually the challenges and the opportunities and the advantages. Look across Africa. Majority of the leaders are in their 80s, 70s, 90s. And because we have a democracy where you have to go to the people and then convince them, a lot of these older guys are much more wealthier and can deploy and use money as a tool to be able to aggregate those numbers, right? The young people, on the other hand, live in economies that make sure that they cannot even sustain themselves, right? So you have a shrinking middle class, which you read about, I don't want to say revolutions now, but including revolutions, including democratic changes, right, and democratic transitions, you find out that the middle class has a huge role to play in deploying the resources that says, because we think in this manner, let's aggregate our resources to be able to mobilize and organize our generation or our demography to make change happen. But now Nigeria has a shrinking middle class, and what you guys know about the Jackpot crisis, right? You see an average young person doing really well. They're out of the country in 3 years. From my university set, I only have 1 or 2 people as friends. I had a huge cohort of friends. Only 1 or 2 people remain in the country, right? A number of them are outside the country already. Why? Because they're seeking for greener pastures, better systems, better opportunities, and not even necessarily for the money in most instances. It's how do I prevent what happened to Anthony Joshua last year from happening to me, even if I have the money? So you see that the resources that you need in a democracy, right, to be able to aggregate these large young people that we're talking about is being moved abroad. And that middle class is not able to mobilize resources to counter the weight of, older politicians and older people who are using money as a tool, right, in their own generation, one, but also for our own generation as well. So if you see an older politician come in and say, I don't want to mention names, right? But I'm sure you know about movements that deploy money and go to different states, give people phones, laptops, fridges. I can't do that. Or any young person who is in the middle of saying, okay, how do we aggregate young people? We can't deploy all those resources, we can't mobilize all those resources. But those are the challenges, right?
Okay, so I hear resource-driven challenges and financial power. Now, Nigeria also seems to have one of the world's youngest population across the world. Now, you talked about the aggregate, so maybe we break it down a bit because, we have over 200 million people. And so if you're saying 60 to 65%, you're looking at about 140 to 160 million people. Now, under the demographic statistics, you have under 30, approximately 60% of the population. Then under 15 takes the 42.5 population. The Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, that 0 to 29, takes over 140 million. Then you have the median age, which is about 18.1%. Now, we also know, talking about young people, the question now remains, to what extent is the current state of Nigeria a reflection of the bad leadership versus youth inaction or youth disengagement? Because I hear you loud and clear when you say resource, okay, money. and, you know, popularity power. But the popularity power of the youth population online, can it be activated offline? Because even though you see a lot of voices, a lot of activism, and, you know, I mean, you just watched our social media, you know, segment, and it was just young people's voices there. So how do we take that currency and amplify it into real-time engagement?
Yeah, a very beautiful question. If you remember when I quoted Frantz Fanon, I said every generation has its own challenges and its own opportunities. We've been talking about NADECO recently and trending. For the NADECO days, when the mission was how do we move from military to democracy, right? They had their own challenges as well. Organizing their own generation across from Kano to Maiduguri, you can't do that the same way you can do that today. Communications wasn't there, internet wasn't there. They had to, people were running away, they had to be moving physically, you know. And so when you come to this demography, these young people's demography today, a number of opportunities clearly and a number of advantages are clear. One here is, you see that, let me give you an example. The other day I was looking at Facebook's numbers, and Facebook currently has about 38.1 million, I'm not sure I'm correct now, but about almost 40 million users, active users in Nigeria. Majority of them between the ages of 25 to 34, active users, right? So you already have one platform that is aggregating in numbers a lot of the young people in this country who obviously care about the country. Like you said, this Kakaaki Social is lots of young people using one platform, one social media platform to, you know, vent, to share their opinions, to talk about the state of the nation and what they want to see. And so that's a very clear opportunity. In our own generation, you find out that these platforms are being used for lamentations, right? While they can also be deployed for organizing. And that's where, personally, I want to see, first of all, the middle-class Nigerians who have enough resources to be able to mobilize, to come together and say, what can we do with the advantages that our generation has? Because we clearly have advantages. There's a friend of mine who says we are, and I think it's a popular, I think it's used in Canada as well, we are the many, they are the few, right? But if that many is in silos, then in a democracy, it's a game of numbers, right? On election day, of course, there are a number of factors that also govern election day, and the commissioners being appointed, what's happening, corruption at the polls, balloting, whether it's electronic transmission or not. But meanwhile, the numbers that you can get to the poll, we have the advantages of using the current technology platforms that we have today to organize. That's number one. Number two is that even though I mentioned resources earlier, right? The resource you need, the resources that you need today, in the Nigeria of today, to mobilize young people who really care about this country, right, is not what you need compared to, you know, what other politicians mobilize, for example, right? For you to be able to deploy money as a tool for keeping younger people, I mean, you need a lot of money.
Why?
Right?
Why?
I mean, look at, I don't want to mention names, but I have to do now. Recently, I saw the City Boy movement in the East have a very rowdy, at least that's how the media reported it, program where they were giving out fridges and, you know, laptops and, I mean, empowerment is what they called it. For you to do that kind of program, you would have deployed billions. Billions, I can guarantee you that. That's the rationale I'm talking about. Now, on the other hand, for you to say, if you're a young Nigerian and you care about this country, and you want to join other young Nigerians who care about this country, and you want to aggregate with other like minds, using a technology platform, you don't need the billions. And I guarantee you there are lots of young people who really care about this country, who want to make something happen, who want to make who want to take action. And that's the key word here. Right, who want to take action, right? You don't need billions to mobilize that and organize that.
Now, coming from, I would also say, yes, I'm a young person as well. looking at the way things are in the political space, you've talked about the economic issues, you know, that will stifle the young person from having interest in politics. But I think since 2023, or 2023 was literally the last time we had young people really come out and master vote. But it's not looking like it's the same now going into 2027. And honestly, I've spoken to a lot of young people, and there are some of them who do not still have their PV system now. Some don't even know that there's currently a registration ongoing. Some don't know that there are venues where to go and register for their PVCs, how to do it online. So apart from the economic indices, there are lapses when it comes to young persons, in also noting that, oh, okay, we have somebody that, or people that we can look to who are interested in young people. So why is it that the young person is also not interested in that aspect of educating themselves on, okay, this is what I need to do, this is what we need to do. These are people that, okay, candidates who are interested in young people, and then we need to follow, because apart from the economic indices, you can also gather support for whoever shows interest in young persons.
I talked about systemic barriers earlier, right? What you just said is a symptom of a systemic barrier. Okay. If you go to the United States, I mean, I'm not a United States fan, right? But if you go to the United States today, the average young child who, I don't know what your grades are, but you take a child that's in our own primary 5 and primary 6, right, has just left that primary education and is going into college or so, they know their rights. They know their constitution. And why? It is not out of I'm interested, right? Because that's literally just like vibes and inshallah. It is rooted in the education system, right? A young American leaves the primary school or gets into college and is aware, if not as detailed as an historian as an history student, right? But is aware of the rights and constitution. In Nigeria today, right? Yes, we do civic education. I think there was civic education in the curriculum recently, right? But how much of that civic education leaves the student coming out and saying, I know that by 18 years old, I have to go to the PVC register. I know that the where to register, right? My right to vote and get my INEC card, all right, is a local government office in my local government. They know what a local government is, right? Do you know all the local governments in Nigeria, 704 local governments in Nigeria, have INEC offices, right? Majority of people who, and in that same local government, you have at the very least, at least I use my own local government as an example, you have more than 13 primary schools, right? And more than 15 secondary schools in that same local government. Right. So the systemic barrier I'm telling you is not that it is a young people are not serious, young people are not interested. As you can see, young people are interested.
A majority.
Yes.
That's a majority, because you talk about systemic barrier. But isn't it also an individual? Isn't it also a duty to yourself as a person to educate yourself on these things without having somebody to let you know that at 18 you need to vote, at 18 you need to go register for your PVC, at 18 you need to know where your INEC office is and all of that.
Now, this is where I'm a philosopher by background.
All right.
And what you just said that caught my attention is the word duty. Right? Do you know that duty and what you can also call obligation, I don't want to use the Greek words now, are taught? Your sense of duty is taught. I don't know if you're married, right? Okay, but when you get married and you have a child and you have a wife, your sense of duty as an husband and as a father is taught to you, right? Not in an informal education sense, but from your father and from your family. You see what I'm making? So the sense of duty that young people have today, right? And that nonchalance that you're trying to put across, if I use that word to describe it, was taught intentionally. That's what I call systemic barriers, intentionally. There's a reason why you don't see strong civic education in our primary schools and our secondary schools. There's a reason. There's a reason why you see that the National Youth Service Corps, right, chastise a young corporal who's talking about the fact that the president has approved 77,000 naira for their allowances, and they're still getting 10,000 naira. There's a reason why. I'm sure you remember that story, right? There's a reason why, right? It's intentional. That's what I call systemic barriers. Systemic barriers So when you look at the reason, and this is not a Nigeria thing, right? Look at across Africa, right? There is a political gap between the septuagenarians, right, and the young people who form majority of the continent.
Okay, so let me come in here because I seem to think about differently, and I will explain why.
Yeah.
The youth population of Kenya accounts for 75% of their population.
Yeah.
And when you think about that number, it also makes up 55% of their labor force.
Yeah.
However, if you also looked at the indices of the participation for holding government accountable in the protest in 2024 on the tax reform policy that happened in Kenya, I was there, I witnessed it, you would find out that layering that intervention, 35% of young people are registered in political parties across the country, from the urban centers to the rural centers, across board, whether literate or illiterate, but they share one common goal: accountability, whether online or offline. So now the energy, the organism of bringing together the solidarity of thought to say our leaders must be accountable to us, because majority of us are in the political parties. We are also voters and can mobilize our consensus and the currency of our young people to remove a president from office. Remember that the president was so afraid after that movement that they had to go back to revert the tax reform policy because of the movement of the young people, both young people with disabilities across board, women and young girls. Now, again, that is because the people at the center also understand the power and the currency of youths in politics. And young people, you know, selflessly engaging politically, not for stomach infrastructure or self-gain. So I'm bringing it back to you when I hear resource, when I hear, you know, mobilization and money building politics. How do we move from this conversation of, you know, let us teach the youth to mentorship and mentoring of the youth? Do you think that the leadership, the septuagenarians, the boys club, of so to speak, the big fathers, are mentoring young men to think leadership rather than power broking? Because again, a lot of young men I see are seeking power to become, but not seeking power to serve. So how do we go back to the original principle of teaching leadership?
Again, I absolutely agree with you. I frequent Kenya a lot. I have people in Kenya who work in organization. And I agree with you. Definitely, which goes back again into my point, young men in today's Nigeria are being taught political service for myself.
Power grabbing.
Power grabbing. They are being taught, right? The septuagenarians are handing over that structure. It's a norm. The sense of how to go about politics in Nigeria to their kids, right? In the National Assembly today, I do not begrudge any of them, right? But there is a caucus of children of former political leaders who are currently in the National Assembly today, right? In the next couple of years, it's going to continue. So the point I'm making here...
Is that such a bad thing, or is it a good thing and a bad thing?
No. I don't want to characterize as good or bad.
Okay.
The point I want to characterize here is intentionality, right? And that everything you see is by design. What you were talking about, which I don't know if you guys know, but I was national youth leader of COA Party when Professor Shonaya ran for election some years ago, right? All the way to 2018 before I went for my master's in public policy, right? I've lived and I've wanted and I continue to want for a Nigeria where young people who have the mind to serve are the ones aggregating together, right? But if we're going to see that Nigeria, it is going to be intentional. What does intentional mean? Intentional means that a crop of younger people, middle-class people, maybe even diasporan people, are putting little resources together to say, we have the platform and the technology to be able to say that voter registration drive in your local government, this is exactly how to go about it, right? And go to Facebook where these young people are, aggregate them on a technology platform, and then organize on the ground. In this particular location, there is a bus going to the local government by this time. If you want to register and participate, right, then go there. So there is a, let me land on one very single important point. There is a disconnect between I care about this country. I want things to change. 2, I want to take action. Right? When you see a lot of young Nigerians who are venting, right, there is not one singular place to go to say, I mean, I belong to this group, I belong to this movement, I want to take action about it. Look at all the movements that we've had in Nigeria. Up to today, they are largely, to a reasonable extent, largely individual focused. They're tied to a particular individual, a certain individual, right, at the helm, and the purpose of that movement in most instances is the realization of the political ambition of that individual, right? And when you go into such movements, it's basically just saying, how do we get this person elected? How do we get this person elected? And there's that narrative around systems change coming in the person of an individual. Meanwhile, to change this country, right, the systemic change that we need cannot be an individual. It cannot, right? It has to be all of us, young people in different parts of the country, and even middle-aged people, because this is not just a young people matter for changing the country, right? Coming together across different states, subnationals, local governments, to say this is where we're heading. And that where we're heading is we want, a truly federal country. We want investment in human capital and education instead of black jeeps, right? We want economic diversification and industrialization, right? So that people have jobs. Very clear goals.
Yeah. Now, to add to this now, looking at young people and everything you talked about, we still face issues that the older generations had. What do they say? Division among the young people. There is no understanding of the proper direction young people want this country to go for their own future. Because whatever is happening now, we are the ones that are going to pay for it.
Yes, absolutely.
In the future. Now, we still face tribalism, misogyny. There are different issues. So how do we begin to move away from this? Because there are lots of average young men who will not look at a woman to run for an office or support a lady. There are lots of them who will say, oh, this person is not from my tribe, so I'm not going to... So these are big issues that we still face, which I feel, or I felt in 2026, a young person should know better.
Not to reiterate on the point of knowing better, right? Because like I said, it's intentional. What needs to happen is, or why that exists, is there is not one single Nigerian identity. I don't know how much time we have left, but if I go into this, it might say, what does it mean to be a Nigerian? And this is very controversial. What does it mean to be a Nigerian? Tell me.
We're the ones supposed to be asking the question.
I know what it means to be a Yoruba person. Right? I know what it means to be an Igbo person. I know what it means to be a TV. I know what it means to be an Ibibio. I know how an Ibibio man dresses, how he dances. How does a Nigerian dance? How does a Nigerian dress? The Nigerian identity, the only Nigerian identity that any one of us can familiarize with is a Nigerian in the diaspora, right? You go to, I just came back from Europe, one of the countries there. You see a Nigerian, we identify with each other. Before, like you see us nodding to each other before we even, I don't know whether you're Igbo or Yoruba or whatever you're wearing, right? The sense of being, that sense of unity that you're talking about, that sense of I'm Nigerian, right? It is not well articulated for any young Nigerian, even a Nigerian today. And that's why you see the division. See, again, back a little bit to philosophy and history, right? We're human beings. Our first fundamental, because we're human beings, we're social beings, right? And our first fundamental social bonding is with our tribe, right? And that's not just it is a looking beyond yourself to something greater than you, because the sum of the tribe is greater than one individual, right? But that sum of the tribe has to have meaning. It has to have something you can attach to, something you can belong to, right? Till today, who has articulated what exactly, where are we going as a country? What's our vision? And I don't mean all this Vision 2020 documents, right? What's the vision for Nigeria that says, as a young person in Osun State, now, not as a Yoruba person, as a young man in Osun State, this is how I contribute to the vision of this country. One last example, Singapore, right? Is a very bad example to compare to Nigeria because it's a very small state, number one. Number two, it was also multi-ethnic in the beginning. But you know what Lee Kuan Yew did when they started this journey, right? First of all, everyone started speaking the same language. I'm not advocating that for Nigeria, right? But the fundamental thing that happened was there was a sense of we are Singaporeans, right? We are Singaporeans. Whether you were Chinese or Malay or originally from the natives or the Aborigines, it is one singular. And apart from that, this is where we're going, right? Singapore at the time was one of the poorest countries in Asia. But Lee Kuan Yew had a very critical singular vision. Singapore could become the financial hub. I can go into the economics of it right now, but if you check the stock exchange, the global stock exchange, right? Singapore sits at some very unique place in the map that ensures that the global stock exchange can continue 24 hours. Before that, it wasn't clear, right? There was a singular vision for the country. Everyone knew that, the government was going towards that, the businesses were recalibrated. So today, now if you go to Singapore, there are more financial services companies in Singapore than anywhere else in Asia, in that area, right? So that singular vision of this is where we're going, guys. Like, look at Nigeria. We are if you draw the map of Africa, we're almost like the heart of the continent, right? Where are we going? How are we articulating? Because for you to get that singular Nigerian identity, you need something to bind everybody together on that journey that we're going. And that's why I think movements are failed in a country. Because when you see a movement, you don't see that clear Nigerian vision. What you see is the individual to say, I'm going to go there and I'm going to change things, right? But that's Nigeria's presidential elections have been funny. We went all the way from Obasanjo to Yar'Adua, and then we say, oh, no, this is not working. Let's do Buhari. Buhari is going to save us from insecurity. Then Buhari came, and then we're like, oh, no, you know what? We need someone to that crop. There's always a savior mentality. You remember Good Luck Jonathan was like, good luck, we bring good luck to Nigeria, right? Individually led movements or ambitions, right, cannot take us to where we want to go. Young Nigerians need a very clear sense of direction, vision, belonging, right? And I don't think this is a hard thing to mobilize resources to do. Right? If you want to bribe people and convince people to come and support you without offering them your hope or vision.
So just for the want of time, because we're just about to round off, and I think you've made very salient points, very insightful, and I think it's a call to young people out there and also the social groups that they belong to, because when I hear you, it also brings my sensibilities to South Africa with a youth population of over 35%, and what they have begun to do. I mean, you see the ANC party, I mean, you see young rising voices in politics, and what they had begun to do is to look at youth democracy cohorts to hold leadership accountable. So can we also see, like you said, mobilizing from online to offline and aggregating support, perhaps maybe from the diaspora networks as well, to put money where the heart is, not where the mouth is, because they will eat, chop and run.
And I think that would be, in fact, I couldn't have summarized it better. You need I think young Nigerians diaspora can provide enough resources, not billions, but enough resources to be able to mobilize action on the ground. Look at NSARS, right? A lot of people talk about how much funding. In fact, after the entire protest, there was also something trending online about accountability for the funds, right? But the fact that the funds that you need, not to mobilize a protest like NSARS, but to mobilize action, getting people registered to vote, getting young people to go to their local government and say, Mr. Local Government Chairman.
Do they even know the Constitution?
Getting them a copy of the Constitution, right? A summarized copy of the Constitution. Getting them budgets, infographic cards, say, this is how much came to your local government this month, right? We can do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Jude Farami, youth activist, public affairs commentator, for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We wish you all the best.
Thanks so much.
All right, that's where we also draw the curtain here on this side of the show. It's been great, from politics to youth and, of course, to some economy as well. We're hoping to get Funke Ogunlulu in there, but I'm sure she's very busy trying to find out what the barometer on whether to be or not to be for the ADC convention is like. Oh, sure, she'll be reaching you later on in the show. My name is Adora Sydney Jack. Thank you.
And I am Chukwuyo Monka. Thanks for watching.
AIT, sharing the African experience.
Program that brings to you news, analysis, development, and everything that concerns your well-being. I'm Ogom Ezedibo. So the measles and rubella vaccine we're talking about now, is it different from the normal measles that children get at 9 months?
Yes, it adds another antigen. So the measles component is the same as the measles vaccine, but rubella is another disease that is similar to measles, but is unique in that it's very costly if it affects a pregnant woman.
A lot of Nigerians are unaware that these services are actually there.
Okay, first off, I think there are a couple of reasons why a lot of Nigerians are not aware. First is the issue of trust deficits. Nigerians are so self-absorbed in solving their problems on their own.
My name is Moa. Remember it? You are...
She's stuck
over here.
Me.
This is a secret between the four of us. The fried cake is so yummy. Wow!